Good evening. I would like to call to order this meeting of the Winchendon Board of Selectmen. It is Monday, September 12th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there anyone in the audience this evening who is audio or video recording? If you would, okay. Okay, so it's both, your audio and video. Okay, that's it.
What is his name, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Is the gentleman's name that is recording?
No, I'm not actually recording. You guys got it on YouTube. You guys doing a great job. Congratulations.
Oh, all right. Thank you. All right, Selectmen's comments and announcements. Mrs. Lapointe.
I'm all set, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Anderson.
None at this time.
Mr. Ward.
I have a couple thank yous. I want to thank the Winchendon Fire Department for holding their annual 9/11 remembrance ceremony outside the station on Sunday. They never forget. Thank you. I want to also thank the town clerk, Wendy Stevens, and staff, election warden, deputy warden, and the townspeople who work early voting and the state primary election. They also did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a couple. It's a little early, but we'll announce that Halloween this year is going to be held on Monday, October 31st, as we have in the past. It's on Halloween itself, from 5:30 to 7:30, so people can start planning. Also, I have a proclamation. It was brought to our attention that this is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and I would like to take a moment to read this into the record. The Town of Winchendon Childhood Cancer Awareness Month Proclamation. Whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection report cancer is the leading cause of death by disease among U.S. children between infancy and age 15. This tragic disease is detected in more than 16,000 of our country's young people each year. An estimated 400,000 children and adolescents are diagnosed with cancer globally each year. And whereas 1 in 5 of our nation's children loses his or her battle with cancer, many infants, children, and teens will suffer from long-term effects of comprehensive treatment, including secondary cancers. And whereas founded nearly 30 years ago by Stephen Firestein, a member of the philanthropic Max Factor Cosmetics family, the American Cancer Fund for Children, Incorporated, Kids Cancer Connection, Inc., and Lions Club International are dedicated to helping these children and their families. And whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection provide a variety of vital patient psychosocial services to children undergoing cancer treatment at UMass Hospital, Shriners Children's Hospital, Boston, Dana-Farber Children's Cancer Center, Mass General Hospital for Children, as well as participating hospitals throughout the country, thereby enhancing the quality of life for these children and their families. And whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection also sponsored toy distributions, Laughternoon, Laughing is Healing, positive appearance programs, pet-assisted therapy, KCC Supercar Experience, educational programs, and hospital celebrations in honor of a child's determination and bravery to fight the battle against childhood cancer. Now, therefore, we, the Select Board, on behalf of the Town of Winchendon, hereby proclaim and recognize the month of September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in Winchendon, and encourage all residents to recognize and participate in its observance. And witness whereof, we have set our hand and caused the seal of the Town of Winchendon Board of Selectmen to be affixed on this 12th day of September 2022 AD. Winchendon Board of Selectmen. Is there anyone who would like to speak to that or make any comments? All right. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move the board issue the following proclamation recognizing the month of September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor say aye,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Are there any public comments or announcements this evening? Sir, if you would please come forward. Yeah, I'd rather you keep on the leash. Thank you. Either chair, please state your name for the record.
My name is Edward Ford Jr., currently registered to vote at 364 Brown Street. However, we all know the drama being displayed. Currently, I have several, we'll say, people in order to fish out some of these drug problems we've been having in town. I can pretty much find the house with rather quickness, and I can stand in front of it until your boys show up to take care of it. But if your boys don't take care of it, I don't know what they're going to do, because they are tired of watching their brothers, their sisters, and their lovers OD and not carry healthy wombs, okay? There is a lot of other stuff going on. As we all know, the Bellow House got knocked on the other day. That was the Darkskins, which is your local kitty group, okay? These are kitty little bangers that want to clean up the neighborhood like cops, but don't have badges, okay? They said someone under the age of 18 bought something from the Bellow House. I knocked on the door. That's basically how that situation will go down. If you guys vote at a town meeting to keep this up, it'll keep up until you guys vote it out, okay? This is my job. Doesn't matter if you pay me or not. My children are out there running around. I did not will them into their wombs. I have to take care of them. That was a lot. Okay. I would like to turn that property, Bellow House, into a outdoor dancing ring. Basically, we go there and we dance 6 days of the week and dance our heart's content, buy from the liquor store, buy from the local restaurants and delivery stores, dance. Come Friday at 8 p.m., me and the police chief, if he's still willing, will teach that dojo, which means I'm going to teach 5 hours a week. He's going to teach 5 hours a week. And if we can't find somebody to fill our spot for that dojo, then we probably shouldn't be doing this, because it's about being community. And whether the community is around the planet or right here, it's about being community.
Sure. Have you spoken to anyone at Town Hall regarding your plans?
This is
Justin,
the
are you
first time I've
commu-
actually spoken to
Okay.
anybody.
All right. If I could ask you, perhaps get in touch with our town manager, Mr. Saltzback, and he could point you in the right direction to speak to people about what you need to do and what you're looking to get
Obviously,
done.
the property owner has been told by, I believe, the Board of Health to change the siding on the building, and he has been making bank on the building. And I believe I served the Winchendon PD with some death certificates coming out of the Chicks restaurant that they may be up to disputing on whether or not they should have been narcaned or left or whatever happened there.
Okay.
That's something for a court to handle, but it is an argument that they brought up. Well, I brought up my argument.
Sure.
My
Okay.
argument then, Stones, if you're going to sell a substance in this house, this town district, it must be made in this town district. If it is not made in this town district, you should not be selling it. You do not sell it, you trade it for meat, shirt, housing.
Okay. Yeah, I think if you would get in touch with Mr. Saltzback, and then we'll see what we can do.
Okay. I believe I may have chased out a biker district out of the pub who wants to fight dogs. I gave a rule that it would be 1 minute. You have to be able to call off your dog. The reason why they called me up is because that dog owner could not call off his dog. So I walked my dog into that bar.
Sure, Madam Chair, if I may. Mr. Ford, thank you for coming by tonight. I definitely appreciate it. It's good to hear from you, and it was good to see you earlier today out on Central Street. If you can come by during business hours, and maybe you and I can sit down and we can run through some of these issues and try to address them. Does that work for you?
All right, one more thing, and then I go
Sure.
back to my seat. Okay. State and federal law. Originally, I'm not sure how long ago, it may have been 1700s, it may have been 1800s, but it was township voted in state and federal law. If our township does not vote in state and federal law, our township does not carry state and federal law. And I can guarantee you a militia that will keep state and federal law off our butt, provided we cast these votes on their laws.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you very much. Anyone else have any comments or announcements? All right, moving on. We have no public hearings this evening. Under appointments and resignations, we have a seat adjustment. Garrett Want is currently a full member, and he's asking to be appointed as an alternate member. And Amanda Phillips is currently an alternate member and is looking to be appointed to the full seat. And the planning board chair does support the move. Any questions or comments? Is there anyone, all right, neither of you are here tonight, right? I didn't think so. Mrs. Anderson?
I'm just curious, it does say that the planning board chair approves it, but did the entire planning board approve it? Was it brought before them?
That I don't know.
Okay.
Any input on that, Mrs. Holzbeck?
So I do know in conversations that both Amanda and Garrett are approving of it, but I don't know if the board as an entirety had taken a vote formally on it.
Okay, thank you. What is the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Anderson?
I move the board approve the planning board's request to switch Garrett Want with alternate member Amanda Phillips to the full member seat.
Second.
Thank you, made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. One more under that header, we have requests for 2 resignations from our Community Preservation Act Exploratory Committee, Mr. James McCrohan and Joe Rosa. In your Dropbox, you do have letters from each. I'll take questions and comments or a motion.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Anderson?
I move the board accept the resignations of James McCrohan and Joe Rosa from the Community Preservation Act Exploration Committee.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I would like to,
Mrs. Anderson?
thank you. I believe that was an 11-member board, was it? Is that right?
So that was a conversation that Mrs. Daigle and I were having today, and I think was it narrowed down to 9? It was 5 citizen seats and then 4 set seats.
So it was 9. And so now they're minus the 2 citizen seats, 3 citizen seats, because Mr. Cloutier also resigned. So I'm wondering what that does to the quorum.
Sure. So Mr. Cloutier, I believe, and there was a lot of back and forth on this one, so I believe he initially was the Conservation Commission appointment and then had resigned, and Mr. Bradley took that seat, and then Mr. Cloutier was appointed to a citizen seat and then had resigned. That is correct. But after counting it out today, it looked like there may have been 1 extra citizen that had been appointed. throughout the duration of the committee, but we actually had not seen Joe Rosa at any of the meetings, so I don't know if he was appointed in error, but he never participated, so the numbers are always fine.
Okay. I think that my question is really with the quorum.
Yeah, with the
Making sure that
nine-member committee,
we
they
didn't
need
need to
five for a
adjust
quorum.
the
So
number
now,
of seats available on that committee.
now it does line up and make sense. There is the correct number of seats. If we don't backfill the citizen seat from Joe Rosa, but we do get another appointment from the Historic Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything further? I'll take a motion.
We already did that. That was
Oh, that's
seconded
right.
for
Beg
discussion.
your pardon. All in favor, say aye.
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 And the chair votes aye. Permit license applications. We have before us this evening an entertainment permit for the American Legion End of Summer Party. Is there anyone here this evening? Hi, please come forward, and for the record, state your name.
Good evening, everyone. Karen
Into
Weissen.
the mic, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good evening, everyone. I'm Karen Weissen. I'm the manager at the American Legion. We're currently having a board meeting, so nobody else could come.
Lucky you, you don't have to be there.
I have to go after this.
So you're looking at a pig roast, music. This would be on Sunday, September 18th.
Correct.
Starting at 1, am I reading this right? Okay.
Food will be served at 1, and music is from 2 to 5.
Okay,
And it'll be under the pavilion in the back,
okay,
where our bar is located out there.
okay. No concerns from department heads? Obviously, the Legion has all the licenses they need. Questions, comments from the board?
Could I just make a quick comment? And I know it has nothing to do with this, but I really miss the fireworks.
So don't we. So don't we.
Just take that back to your board meeting.
I will. I promise.
Anything else? If there's none, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ward,
I move the board approve the entertainment permit for the American Legion for the end of summer party to be held on Sunday, September 18th, 2022, as presented this evening.
Second.
any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Just a quick comment, I know that time tends to get away from us. Typically, we request entertainment permits at least a couple of weeks before the event. The short
I'm
notice
aware of
is...
that, so
Okay.
Linda had made me aware of it, so I apologize for that.
Thank you, and we're glad to...
We'll take care of that
glad to
going
put it
forward.
through. Okay, thank you so much.
And we would love to see all your faces there. It'll be a fun time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. We have no department head report this evening. Under new business, we have the Winchton Community Park sponsorships for grand opening of Performing Arts Center. Tiffany Newton. I didn't see her. And I saw her
Could we
earlier.
come back to that, pass it over?
Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Anderson.
I move that we pass over item number 7.1.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We'll come back to that one. 7.2, we have a water and sewer abatement application for 105 Eagle Road. Good evening. If you would, just for the record, state your name.
Jennifer Viana,
Okay, and you are the homeowner?
yes.
Okay. We have copies of the paperwork, the certification from the plumber, verification that the water did not go into the sewer.
It did not, but it absolutely destroyed our home.
Oh,
I've never seen anything like it.
that's, so sorry,
Thank you.
yeah. Questions, comments from the board? You must have had a heart attack when you opened that water bill.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh, my goodness.
absolutely.
Oh, my goodness.
Madam Chair?
Mrs. Anderson?
I'm just curious, because the homes up on Eagle Drive are fairly new, so you wouldn't expect something like that to happen.
Agreed. The pipes burst.
And there's no, like, real reason why?
It was in the middle of winter, the pipe burst, and then it all went through the ceilings, down to the floors, down to the
Oh,
floor.
my
I mean, it
goodness.
just went through the whole house.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Anything I see, wow. I'm sorry, I was reading, I wasn't looking at the pictures. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Like a mattress on top of your stove. Was that a mattress?
No.
That's the ceiling. That's
It
the
looked like it,
ceiling.
like the mattress. had
Almost
come
could have been right through the floor.
This house was beautiful.
Oh, goodness. And there is a note from the Public Works Director approving the request for the abatement in the amount of $10,300.37. Questions, comments from the board?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Anderson.
I would just like to reiterate that this is for the sewer portion of that bill only, because it never did go down a drain. It went throughout the house. And so that is what we're being requested, that be abated.
Be applied towards the sewer charge on the bill.
Right.
Okay. Yep. Anything further? If nothing, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ward,
I move the board acting as the Water Sewer Commissioners abate $10,300.37 plus any accrued interest on the water sewer bill for 105 Eagle Road.
Second.
made and seconded to approve. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Good luck.
Thank you.
Oh, you're
Thank you
very
very
welcome.
much.
Next, we have the Winchendon's Municipal Aggregation indicative pricing for December 22. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as you know, we receive support from Colonial Power Group, Inc., who's with us this evening, when it comes time to go through the municipal aggregation process, essentially bidding for energy. We do this periodically. The bid process, unfortunately for us, for our current term, ends this December. It's unfortunate because the volatile situation regarding energy over the past year, we're pretty much at a peak right now, so it's a bad time to go out. So I asked the folks from Colonial Power Group to come out and join us this evening to kind of talk about some of those dynamics, what's causing those trends, to talk about what the outlook is over the next 6 month to a year period or so. Ultimately, I think after we have this conversation, it's the recommendation to do something short term that will kind of carry us through. It'll be a significant increase, but we wouldn't want to commit to a high number over a long period of time needlessly. So hopefully, things calm down a little bit after that period in time, and things are a little more favorable. It's a little speculative, but if you'd like to dive into a little bit, and if the board has any questions, please jump in at any time.
My name is Mark Capadona from Colonial Power Group, 5 Mount Royal Ave, Marlborough, Mass.
My name is Denise Allard, also from Colonial Power Group.
So tonight we're here to talk to you about your municipal aggregation program. So this is the supply portion of your electricity bill, the national grid bill here in Winchendon. So much like every other commodity, energy has gone through the roof, especially where we live in. We live in New England, so our ISO is ISO New England. And here in New England, we have a small problem. We have a natural gas capacity issue. And it's exacerbated during the wintertime. That's December, January, and February. And that problem is we get to heat our homes before we get to generate electricity with that natural gas. So in the wintertime, we really run up against what I'll call as a rolling brownout. The problem right now is, so for the years past, it's been fine. We get, the pricing has always been higher in the wintertime, but we've been able to get LNG, liquefied natural gas, when our supply is very low. So there's not enough capacity in the pipeline to keep everyone up and running. So that LNG comes in through Everett and another offshore plant. Well, this winter, to get the offshore, to get the LNG, we're now competing against Europe. As I think everyone knows, the current situation, they're getting froze out by Russia. So they're willing to pay any amount of money for the LNG. So we're now competing for liquefied natural gas to fill our system during the winter. I do believe that, well, I'm hopeful that at some point this very high price environment will absolutely come down through, one, demand destruction at these rates. I don't know if I can keep my refrigerator running. So I kid you not, it's an expensive, expensive endeavor this winter. National Grid's in the exact same market that you are, we are. So it's going to be very similar to the past. You'll probably have a more favorable price than National Grid for this coming winter. What happens next summer, I'm not really sure. It's kind of bifurcated. National Grid goes out to bid on Wednesday. So what we're...
Just, could you tie in LNG to electricity?
Yes.
Why is that important when we're talking electricity rates?
So 60% of our electricity is generated by combined cycle natural gas plants. That LNG is regasified, that's put back into the system to create our electricity.
Thank you, yeah.
So especially during those, very cold months. Otherwise, there's plenty of gas up here in New England. Unfortunately, in the wintertime, it's just a tremendous burden. So what we're proposing is don't do something long-term, because right now there's a lot of fear in the marketplace. Unfortunately, with the contract ending, we need to do something. We're proposing maybe a 12-month fixed price product, and at some time during that 12 months, I'm going to be back in front of Justin speaking to him about what we do next and when we sign that contract. So almost immediately, and I'm saying to you February, March of next year, we're hopeful if we have a warm winter like it has been. And I'm old enough to remember when you used to be able to walk across a pond December, January, February. That really has not been the case the last few winters. If we get a warmer winter, we should see pricing start to come back down. Again, it would be helpful if Mr. Putin would come to his senses and maybe not invade sovereign nations, and the rest of the world didn't allow that to happen, because I think that's another large driver. The issue is going to become, how long does that situation last? So what we're in front of you tonight is just asking you to give Justin the authority to sign off on the next contract. I believe we have pricing ready for him tomorrow that he could execute. It's not required. If he doesn't like it, he wouldn't need to sign, but it would be executable tomorrow.
Madam
Sure.
Chair?
Yes, Mrs. Lapointe.
I love that you actually came before us and proposed a short-term solution as opposed to tying us into a long-term solution. I think that's great, and I don't think a lot of businesses do that or have that kind of foresight. But I'm wondering if maybe we could do like 6-month, 9-month, 12-month options as opposed to just...
Yeah, so I'm hoping in your packet, all those options are there.
I'm sorry.
Yep, no, I'm saying to you, it's brutally expensive for 12 months. 6 months is that much worse.
Right.
So we just thought we'd spread the pain over the next 12 months. The one thing I should mention is anyone in town has the ability to opt out of this program at any time. So they could go back to basic service. Unfortunately, I don't think basic service is going to be an option until a May timeframe.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, and I understand what you're saying. 6 months is going to hurt more than if you go over 12 months. Because typically we do, at least a couple years? How often do we?
3.
Yeah,
3 year.
There's been 2 3-year contracts, excuse me.
2 3 years so far, okay.
And the rate has been beneficial. I think I looked before I came in. It's saved around $1.8 million so far since the program began.
Okay, yeah. Anything else from the board?
I don't like it.
No.
I don't know. You're asking us to put an awful lot on the residents of Winchendon, not just in electric, but we're also going up on their water, we're going up on their sewer. At some point, people are going to crack, And I think one thing I didn't really understand, and I wish you'd elaborate on, is we have the ability to opt out for basic service, but basic service won't start till May?
So basic service is always ongoing. It's just one of the ways we set up the program. So everyone on basic service was automatically enrolled in the program, but they could always opt out and go to basic service or come back to the program whenever they liked. I was just making the point, anyone could opt out of this rate that's going up. The issue becomes, I believe basic service is going to be higher than that this coming winter.
So the town's program is changing its rate with,
Just into the mic. a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Your voice isn't quite as powerful.
so the town's rate would be changing with its December meter read. It would be going up in December. National Grid basic service rate will change November 1st. The winter rate will kick in, and we're saying that rate is going to be right up there with what the town would see starting in December. So that rate for the quote-unquote winter would run from November 1st to the end of April, and then it would change again May 1st, and that's their quote-unquote summer rate that usually comes down.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs.
to
LaPointe.
try to be clear for people watching, so what you're here for is kind of like the alternate supplier line that people see on their National Grid bills, correct?
Correct.
So they could stick with kind of two, let's say National Grid entries or National Grid plus you. And in
Correct.
theory, National Grid plus you is going to be a little bit cheaper.
That is correct. I just want to make sure that I'm clear because people get confused. If you didn't have your rate on there right now, your current rate is 10.3 cents. With National Grid, you'd be paying 11.4 cents. Just so that everyone understood.
Yep.
And Madam Chair, if I could also add, just as a reminder, that National Grid owns the infrastructure, so they're always going to be delivering the energy. What this is discussing is the actual energy source itself, to further complicate.
Yeah, and I know people, I read my National Grid bills, or I did. I think some people, they just look at the bottom line. But as you mentioned, this is the this is the supply portion that we're talking about tonight. National Grid will still have their services and all of their other fees on there. But this would be an alternative to the actual supply. This is where the kilowatt hours get kicked in, along with everything else, at a slightly lower rate.
Correct.
Okay. It's going to be ugly no matter who you have.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mrs.
Could
Salter.
I ask, so what percentage increase is this going to do to the to us? Can you estimate how much our bills will go up with this increase?
The total bill or the supply portion, ma'am?
The supply portion, like what percentage? Is that going to
100.
increase for each bill?
100%.
100%.
Okay, so it's going to double,
That is correct.
At least until May.
that portion.
At least
That
until
portion
May.
of it, which is, right now, it's about 40% of your bill. So in that scenario, you're going to see almost a 60% increase in your bill minus anything on the T&D side.
On the what side, I'm sorry?
The transmission and distribution,
Okay.
the National
Delivery
Grid
side.
portion of the bill.
So if the board authorized the town manager to negotiate this with you, how would the town, what would the town's step be to inform the citizenry of this choice and the whole opt-in, opt-out? Well, actually, everybody is automatically opted in.
Typically, there's a mailer that goes out, and I don't know if that's what we've done historically here.
Correct. We'll generate a postcard. It'll be a 6x11 card stock postcard, and it's going to have the town's new rate term supplier information as well as the price to compare from National Grid for this winter. It will have how to opt out instructions, where to find National Grid's rates if you want to see more information, and our phone number as well as the supplier to call with any questions. But it'll have all the pertinent information so folks have it large print and right in front of them. Yep.
Madam Chair?
If you wanted, we're more than willing to come up to answer people's questions in person. We're happy to do that, whether it's
Thank you.
at a council on aging or at night, or however you guys decide is best. We're happy to accommodate. I'm not certain, I know the program's been up for a while, it might be a good refresher. Up to you.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Mrs. LaPointe?
Sorry.
When you're talking about newspapers, right? Journalists are supposed to write to a second-grade audience.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that a little bit slower?
When you're talking about newspapers, journalists are supposed to write to a second-grade audience. That's like the average, what people can understand. Myself included, this stuff is very confusing. could we, in addition, or work with, do something to do this at like a preschool level so we can understand exactly what it means? I understand here tonight, but to try to do it on a postcard mailer to residents, people aren't going to really understand what it means. Is there anything we could do to do a more building block, understanding of what this means?
And the two of you may have a different response, but this is, in so many ways, is kind of the most building block we can get on a pretty complex issue. But we can try to put something together that maybe visually illustrates with some graphs or charts that are sometimes useful for people.
I can guarantee you what you're going to see on social media a couple months when people actually look at their bills, and they're not going to understand. They're not.
I am fully braced for that, and I think that's the frustrating part, is that for some, they're going to see this as something that the town did, but it's very much a global issue that, like, in so many words, people should have seen coming, or I would hope that they've seen coming if they've been following the news for the past year or so. But with that said, it's still very unpleasant. So.
People aren't going to be able to afford to pay their electric bill. That's what it's going to come down to. That's what's going to
I
happen.
don't know how they're going to.
Yeah.
No,
That-
I'm in
that's what-
agreement.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, this is going to change in December when those Christmas tree lights go on, and they will get that bill in January. And we need to give people a heads up. And I'm also wondering, have we shopped around to other suppliers at all to see?
So that,
What
the
is the
chart
best deal?
that you can see up right now, the names aren't on there because it's active bidding information, so we can't tip their hand on their behalf. But that does represent several different suppliers. So I think the message that we would stress to the community is, all the boxes that you're looking to check, we've checked them. We're not just settling, and it's not just a matter of us just kind of throwing our hands up and saying it is what it is. It's an extremely unfortunate situation. We're in the middle of an energy crisis that's probably the worst people have seen in a long time, at least in the past 30 or 40 years.
Correct.
So we can hammer that home and make it clear to people that it's.
We had better hammer that home.
Yeah, in conjunction with any mailings or whatever, social media, special, come have coffee and
I would
complain about
prefer
your
a
electric
public
bill or
hearing, quite
whatever.
frankly.
Come talk to.
We're more than happy to
experts,
create
whatever.
any of those materials and run them by you and see if, hey, this does meet the litmus test that you're looking for. We're trying to do it kind of across the state. We do this for 80 different communities in Massachusetts, and
Yeah.
it really came down to timing on this one. When we originally went out to bid, not on this load, but on another load in the town of Auburn, and it was the day that Putin invaded. So we said, we should hold off and wait, right? It's going to be this is a terrible day to do it.
Yeah,
Market has done nothing but take off like a rocket ship since then. It just didn't seem like the right time, given the news, to execute that. If I was a Monday morning quarterback, I would have done it today.
yeah.
So it's just one of those things. I thought by now the world would have come to its senses. We're in a difficult place.
Yeah, we are. Anything else from the board?
No.
If there's none, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ward?
and should the motion specify a one-year agreement?
No.
No.
Just authorize the town manager to negotiate.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know what? Maybe I would prefer a shorter agreement. I don't want another 3-year agreement. I will not.
So, and I'm in agreement with that. So the point that was made a little earlier, though, was the shorter the term you do, the more expensive it is per unit.
Yeah, well, I'm not doing a
6
3-year.
months. I think maybe
Absolutely
1
not.
year.
So you're looking at 1 year would be the,
I would say 1 year maximum with the ability to negotiate less.
Does that sound?
That's what we're advising. So it's
No, I
not-
know.
What,
That's your
well, what if,
recommendation. Yeah.
the Ukrainians are now taking more and more of their territory back? What if Russia backs out? What if and the war's over?
Yeah, 3 months now, it can be cheaper.
Then we're going to come, so the nice thing about this is, we have the flexibility of the market on our side. If in 3 months, a supplier 3 is here, the low price, we could go back to that supplier and say, can we do something to extend that? Now driving down the price, now we have to stay with that supplier, but there are things we could do if that scenario happened.
I think what Barbara's saying is then we would already be tied into that 1 year contract.
That's correct.
You're not tied in. I mean, yes, you bought the hedge, so you're going to have to use that high-priced hedge, but you could say, oh, I want to add 24 months at this lower price and blend this in. Now, you wouldn't
need
need
to
to do
think
that.
about
You could sign a contract after that for the lower price for 2 years. As I'm saying to you, these are all choices you have with aggregation that you
Right.
don't have with National Grid.
Right, National Grid,
right.
pay
You
what
get to
they
make
say.
those choices. You get to make those choices.
So there's really no definitive answer on this one, unfortunately, which makes it that much more frustrating. But, you could also, it's a bit of a gamble. You could end up in a situation where you go 6 months, so you're paying a high rate for that 6 months, and at the end of 6 months, it's even higher.
Goes higher.
Yeah, and we have no way of predicting that. It's circumstances on the other side of the world that are entirely out of our hands, so that's the difficult part.
And even if the war were over tomorrow, the prices are still gonna be up there. It's gonna take a long time before it funnels down, and, supplies are back up.
Is it feasible to put a clause in the contract that should prices drop X percentage or whatever, that contract would be subject to renegotiation at that time? Or is it, once it's 12 months, it's 12 months?
Prior. I think we should try to put in a clause prior to expiration
Yeah.
of the contract.
I don't
Madam Chair?
think that's something that we can do.
I
Yes.
think, given the information that we've been given tonight and having to make a rash decision based on this information, I'm not very comfortable with that. I need more time to think about it and research it.
So our contract ends December, whatever. What's the deadline for getting this renegotiated and signed?
So your contract changes with the December meter read, but National Grid has a 60-day lead time requirement if the town were going to be switching suppliers, because they have to onboard that new supplier and get everything tested with the billing, et cetera. So that's the end of September for
Which is-
December. The reason I think we were trying to get something done maybe tomorrow is because National Grid goes out to bid on Wednesday, right? That rate will then be known, and unfortunately, sometimes the supply community comes up to meet that number, because now they know they only have to get right under, right? And we're also heading into winter, so pricing goes up. So
Right.
we're trying, we're just trying to protect a little more against it running up even further.
Sure, no, I understand.
But we do have some time.
Yes.
I don't want you to think that you have to do, we can show pricing tomorrow, and he could say, "Yeah, I'm not happy with the pricing," and we could price it again on Friday, the following Tuesday. Just all these other factors are at play.
Because we meet again in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from tonight. Would that be sufficient time for negotiating some whatever?
So just to reiterate though,
Gonna be
at that
too long.
point, National Grid's numbers would be out. So at which point, these folks we're trying to work with will pretty much, almost a guarantee, raise their numbers to be just a hair under National Grid. And in terms of, we use the term negotiation lightly, where there are other scenarios where I might really beat someone up. I don't have much play here. The numbers kind of are just what they are. They come in at what they come in at.
Right.
And there's not much back and forth.
Understood.
And just another point, we did start off with 5 suppliers initially when we were getting indicative pricing a couple months back, and they're just kind of dropped because of the market, right? Some of them won't even bid at this point. So we have lost 2 from some of the indicative rounds earlier on because they're just not comfortable because the
Wow.
market's so volatile, so.
Okay. Pleasure of the board.
Madam Chair,
Mr.
I'd
Ward,
like to make the motion, and then we can vote on it.
the floor is yours.
I move to authorize the town manager to negotiate and enter into this municipal aggregation agreement not to exceed 1 year on the town's behalf.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
The chair will vote aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the cable television. Oh. All right, we will go back to 7.1, which we had passed over. Tiffany Newton is here now to talk about the Winchester Community Park sponsorships for the grand opening of the Performance Arts Center. Good evening.
Good evening.
Madam Chair,
Yes. Mrs.
Before we begin, I would just like to state, and I'll do this every time, in all reality, myself and my husband end up just donating any money to this Winchendon Community Park and its endeavors because we are part of a band that has been contracted to open the event. So I just want to put it on record that the band might receive minimal payment for the event, but I really stand to make no fiscal
An individual.
profit from.
Thank you.
Hi. I wanted to come before you to ask that you would allow us to accept sponsorships to help fund the amphitheater opening to be held on June 10th of 2023. All money obviously incurred from the sponsorships would be used to fund the event, any bands or other entertainment we might have, as well as once those basic event needs are funded, any funds beyond that would go on to help fund the fireworks that we are planning to have at the end of that event. I believe you guys got a flyer which shows the tiered structure of our sponsorships that we'd be looking to get and what each business or individual would receive in turn for their sponsorship. I worked with our town manager and our town council who agreed that sponsorships are allowed as long as the Board of Selectmen approves what they're going to be expended on.
Sure.
I can't talk tonight, I'm
No
sorry.
problem.
I think you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yes, thank you. The only question I have right this second is, I understand that looking for sponsorships to be used for the grand opening event. Thinking in a positive way, you get more sponsorships than you need for the grand opening event. Are you restricted to usage of that money because it was stated for that event?
I think that's something maybe we would have to go back to town's council for. I mean, ultimately, I think you can decide what it's spent on, but in full disclosure to the people we're asking to sponsor, I think we might need to get some clarity on
Yeah,
that.
I'm thinking of just to make sure.
Yep.
Just make it bigger and better.
Huh?
I said you just make it bigger and better.
Yeah, maybe that. Maybe we can afford to add some other things.
Building it, and yeah. If you spend it, they will come. Questions, comments from the board?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Ward?
Yeah, I have a few questions. First of all, I believe the law says that the money, if the Board of Selectmen appoints this money for this event, it must be used on this event. It can't be used for anything else, just to make that clear. Now, how are you going to solicit? Are you going to send a mailer out to every business, or are you actually going to go into the business?
I wanted to personally go into the businesses with the flyer that I have presented to you, so that they have some face-to-face, time with me. I can explain any questions they might have about what the funding would specifically go towards, what kinds of things we're going to be offering that day. But I'd also like to put that flyer on social media and up some other places where maybe individuals of residents might be interested in donating something towards the event on their own.
And
But I
you
wouldn't
are
necessarily-
aware that the number one concern about soliciting is that there be no appearance of pressure
Correct.
on anybody. And if they feel there's pressure, that could be a problem. So,
Correct.
And you may also find certain businesses have a no soliciting sign. So the door-to-door might be a little more difficult than we're thinking,
Okay.
but just
Would
be
you
aware of.
prefer a mailer? Do you think that would be
I
more-
have no problems personally with you, going door-to-door, just, being very aware of any solicitation liability for
Okay.
whatever.
yeah, almost like you need the same message for every vendor you go to.
Absolutely.
You can't be using different words for somebody and they feel like they're being pressured.
Absolutely.
So who will be making the determination, once the funds are collected? I know it has to go to the event, but it might go to this band or to get another band or to get a fireworks display. Who who's going to make that decision? Is it the Recreation Commission, or is it the Winchendon Community Park Committee? Who's making the decisions?
So ultimately, essentially, you would be making the decision that would go to this event, and the discretion in which that would happen would be under, so I'm gonna make it even more confusing. We have Recreation, we have the Community Park Committee, but we also have a committee formed with Ken LeBrecq, Dave Romanowski, Jane Lapointe, and myself, who's actually doing the opening planning. So it would most likely be that group, specifically me and Dave, with the recommendations to the entire committee based on what the committee has
So it's
said
gonna
they
be
want to happen at this event and what the cost is for
There's going to be a
those
joint
items.
meeting with all the committees, and their vote carries.
Correct. I mean, I would be hesitant to get into the nitty-gritty of like line-by-line expenditures, but I think in a broader sense, it's a decision that I don't want to be making in a vacuum, and I'm sure Tiffany doesn't want to be making it in a vacuum. And so for that reason, the Winchendon Community Park Committee, which is, you know, in effect part of the Recreation Committee, it's going to incorporate input from all of those parties. The other piece is the donations received for this more than likely aren't going to fund a majority of what that grand opening may be, at least based on preliminary conversations we've had. A bulk of that funding is going to come from the Robinson Broadhurst Foundation. And so they're going to have a lot of input and a lot of say in terms of how those funds are used. But I do want to make sure it's a public and transparent process as we go through the planning process.
And my final two concerns, and are you aware that everybody you contact, whether they give or don't give, that there needs to be a public record of their names of the businesses that you contact, and that needs to be available to the public.
Absolutely.
My other concern, I'm looking at the levels, the platinum levels, 500. So as you go up the levels, for bronze level, you get your name and business in the event program, but silver, you get a free T-shirt, I assume, and you get whatever that below person got.
Yes.
So the platinum level gets whatever platinum level is, but also what the gold, silver, and bronze get.
Yes.
Okay, just want to follow that through.
Sure. Mrs. Anderson, I think you were going to say something?
Yeah, my big concern is really the perception of impropriety. You do work in the planning office, and you will also be representing the community park as the rec director, correct?
Yes.
And so therefore, businesses are going to perceive
Well, the
that,
town's asking for money.
right, it's an additional tax, if you will. And I just don't think we're in that business of requesting sponsorships. I think it looks bad and people could be offended.
And that's a valid point, and somebody in the course of this conversation had brought up, by example, Earth Day, and we get donations from McDonald's. But Earth Day is run by the Board of Health, and the Board of Health inspects McDonald's. And so, how could that be perceived? And so we usually try to be pretty careful about the way we go about it, and just be, sensitive to the fact of the perception of some type of shakedown from town hall. It's not really, I think anybody that knows us would know that that's not something that we're up to, but once again, perception is perception, and we want to try to avoid that.
Yeah, but is that solicited? Do you go to McDonald's and ask them to give food for Earth Day? Or did they just say, this is what we're willing to do?
So I couldn't tell you originally, but I think at this point, they just know that when Earth Day comes, they reach out and just kind of donate.
There's a difference between physically going in and asking them to do it, and them coming to you and say, we'd like to do this.
Right. So by example, in my previous community, we had a large community park in our town center where there was a component that we did raise funds for this, and I actually personally went around and requested from businesses, from citizens, but it was more of, a community-oriented challenge, so it wasn't like one individual going, or at that point, the assistant town administrator going and telling this business like, hey, can you give us money? But I think it was more of a larger, broader push, I think, community-wide, and it may be helpful if it's not exclusively just Tiffany carrying the weight of going around and asking for money, but if it's something that the community is challenging each other to do, it ended up being, a situation where one person on a committee donated, $250 and kind of guilted their other friend on the board to do the same, and eventually it kind of snowballed and ended up being a nice kind of community occasion, and we could try to frame it in that sense if it makes it a little more palatable. But I share the concerns you have.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think they're all valid concerns, but I just want to state that we live in a community where, I would say by and large, people feel that it doesn't offer a lot to them. Oh, there's no other activities for kids. There's nothing to do. So we need to think outside of the box within the legal parameters and the ethics commentary that's already out there and do what we can to make this successful and make this town what people are asking it to be, instead of just going with status quo and saying that we can't.
I understand everything you just said, so, but I'm not sure, do you feel this is a good thing to do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Just,
Yep.
okay. Maybe having volunteers do the soliciting rather than someone from the town?
I think the more hands, the lighter the work, right?
We did just discuss this, we just had a meeting, that's why I was late to this meeting. And some of the members on there did offer willingness to help do that, and they do not sit in another seat within the town, so maybe that would also be helpful.
And I think, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just like when you have an employee that works in a call center, you have a script that you have to stick to and you can't veer, right? Just to make sure.
Mr. Lucier? I will allow public input. For the record, state your name, please.
Yep,
Into
Rick
the mic.
Lucier. Rick Lucier, Maple Street. With the Earth Day, I go and request the stuff. There is no member of the Board of Health that goes in any place and does any of that. I created the initiative to get the dumpster and stuff like that, so I go and take care of that voluntarily. And I have no ties to it other than just asking those who wish to. There's no public pressure or anything. It's not like there's a board member doing it or a town employee doing it. It's completely separate.
All right, great. Thank you for clarifying.
So then you might want to think of maybe having nobody that's, working for the town or do such a thing, or come up with something where you appoint somebody that is fully known and let it go like that.
Are you volunteering?
I hear it as a volunteering.
Your point is taken. Yeah.
I'm torn like an old sweater on that one.
Thank you.
I just figured I'd give you that input because there's no impropriety as far as the Earth Day one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything further from the board? If there is no further discussion, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ward?
I'll make this motion with the understanding that they're going to seriously look at getting somebody else to do the soliciting. That doesn't have a direct tie to the town or to a committee that might come before. That's business. I move the Board of Selectmen approve a gift account for the Winchendon Community Park and authorize the funds collected for the grand opening sponsorships be spent for the purpose of the grand opening of the Winchendon Community Park Performing Arts Amphitheater to be held on June 10th, 2023, as presented this evening.
Second.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Sulzbach?
could I ask the Vice Chair to amend that motion to include not just the grand opening, but, other programming initiatives, or like the support of programming, public programming at the Winchendon Community Park or something, so that if there is a remainder, if we run into that situation, that it could be used more loosely. Still in support of the park and events at the park, but not specifically the grand opening. Sorry to throw a wrench in there.
I'm not sure, a question of the legal, it was pretty specific in here that it had to be for a specific event.
Oh.
And I don't know if we can just say a blanket, it can be used just about for anything.
Then I would keep it as it is.
So I'd really prefer to just stay with this motion. If we have an issue, when that time comes, we'll deal with it, but please try to spend it all.
Absolutely. I don't think we'll have a problem with that.
We do have a motion on the floor. I see. What's your last name? Raising her hand. Is the board all right with her coming up and speaking?
Yep.
Because we do have a motion on the floor. Please come ahead.
Yeah, Jane Lapointe from Winchington, Central Street in Winchington. The only reason I raised my hand was picking up on what Justin had suggested. One of the things that we are talking about in thinking about the grand opening is that there would be the grand opening event on June 10th. But we're also toying with the idea, because we've looked at what others have done, where we're actually dealing with this first summer as our grand opening of the amphitheater and the park, and we're looking to see if we can get a series of events throughout the summer, but there would only be this one huge one with, that goes from 1 to 9 and fireworks and all of that, so that we can create a habit of having events there and people using it. So I just wanted to put that out there in case that helps with what your concern is, Rick.
Thank you. If that would be the wish of the maker of the motion and the seconder of the motion, we could just end the motion after the word amphitheater and not specify a specific date.
I still have a problem with that.
Okay.
Maybe the lawyers need to look into it,
Okay.
because it's throwing it loosely out there. It could be for a whole summer. I mean,
Understood.
Madam Chair,
Just wanted to, yes, Mrs. Lapointe.
if I may, to Ms. Newton, do we have time to act on this? Are you going to put this flyer out in the next couple days, or could we kind of flesh it out a little more and vote next time?
We can definitely wait for 2 more weeks if that's what you guys would like, and get some more answers from legal counsel to clarify what is and is not allowed. And obviously for your thoughts, and maybe in the meantime I can find somebody who would be the representative to do that, and then we'd already have that in place if that's something. Obviously, the sooner we get out, the better. We can start raising funds, but again, the opening is not until June of next year, so there is time for sure.
Okay.
Can I just ask how many times we're going to go to legal counsel and how much it costs us to find out how much money we have to raise?
So I was going to say that, well, I appreciate the flexibility from everybody in the room. I'm fine with the motion the way it was originally proposed. I don't think there's going to be a significant remainder. It was more so just me being overly cautious. Point taken. It's probably like $250 a pop every time I...
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, yeah, if you're thinking fireworks, because I've done fireworks before,
Yes.
you're going to need a lot of money. And,
Yes,
I think you will use it easily, because if you're going to have fireworks, it needs to be the best fireworks this town has ever seen. If you want to draw crowds down to the amphitheater, this needs to be the biggest event of the summer.
Yes, it does. We already are getting quite a lot of our preliminary costs in. We've already held a meeting about the fireworks with Atlas. We're looking for final pricing, but just the fireworks alone are somewhere in the $15,000 range. So, I mean,
5 digits.
it would be hard pressed to raise that, I think.
Yeah.
So
All
I'm
right.
willing to still keep my motion.
So we do have a motion on the floor as written and has been seconded. Mrs. Anderson?
Madam Chair, now that I'm looking at it, and I'm wondering why you picked June 10th to be your opening day and possibly have fireworks, when if you maybe aligned it with summer solstice, it would be a much more...
Well, originally, the committee
Extravagant
had
event.
wanted to actually hold it the week before in June, which is graduation weekend. And so we moved it to the second weekend. And we don't want to impede on something that's already here for the grand opening. We really want that to be its own event where the focus is the amphitheater and the park. And combining it with summer solstice would take away from that.
Okay.
Is summer solstice a Clark fundraising activity?
Yes.
Yeah.
And June 10th is Founder's Day.
Which we found out as a happy afterthought,
Right.
actually.
Winchendon's founding day.
Oh, I saw that note, yeah. Very good. And anything further before I call the vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed?
No.
So it is 4-1. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. 7.4, cable television license renewal. Mr. Salzback.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, and I would mention that this initiative has been quarterbacked by Mrs. Daigle, and so I'm going to hand it over to her, but it's been a several month-long process in collaboration with the Communication Committee. Just as a brief overview, but Linda, if you'd like to take it from here.
The Communications Committee meeting, can you hear me? Is this on? Okay, that's better. Has been meeting over a year, looking at the past contract and trying to give their thoughts on what they would like to see in the new contract. So we have taken that to Comcast, made several calls with them through Zoom to speak about the different sections of the contract that we would like to see changed. There's some points here that are highlighted for the board to see. Most importantly, the funding sources that they're going to give us. So for their PEG access support, the capital was negotiated to be $120,000. That's up from $45,000 from the prior contract. And when they gave us their preliminary contract, the amount was, I believe, $80,000. So that was a win there. The franchise fee in our prior contract was only 1%, and we were able to negotiate that to 3.25%.
So, excuse me, so this is monies coming into the town?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Another big win, they do agree to give us an HD channel, a second HD channel, and that will be used by the school department. The school has gathered quotes on getting the equipment upgraded there, and Comcast is working on the cost that would be to bring the line here to Town Hall so that they can do their meetings from the school, but it will go through the system here. We're looking to purchase some really nifty new updates to the system in there with the funding source that they're giving us. The school will be able to access it from here too, and a lot of features like closed captioning and automatic displaying it on a website will be all included in that. Another win was the minimum density for how many units that there would be for them to install the cable, and we were able to get that to 18. It was previously at 20 and 40. So it's a little bit more. We had to twist an arm to get that, so we're happy that we were able to get that. There's a couple items outstanding from the Communications Committee that they would like to see. They're having a hard stance on this, and I don't blame them. It's the senior citizen discount. Comcast currently doesn't offer anything in the contract for a senior citizen discount, but they do a side agreement, and what they're offering is only $2. If you have special services or additional services, they'll offer $2 a month off of that for a senior. So we kind of think that's embarrassing and on their part, and hoping that that can get changed. Town Council is currently in communication with Comcast this morning, and continued it through the afternoon. I don't have an update on that, but we're looking to see if if there's any public input on this contract, or if you have any questions about it, and then we would like to bring it back before the board for your September 26th meeting. We'll probably, in the meantime, visit with the Communications Committee again to review the final draft and bring it back to you on the 26th of September for execution, or the approval for the Board of Selectmen to actually sign it, They're the cable commissioners for the town.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Questions, comments?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Ward?
Yeah, I just have a question on the senior citizen discount, and that's for 62 plus. Now, they're suggesting $2 per month, I guess, per person or household, and you're suggesting 15% across all Comcast cable services for seniors. Are you also basing it on the needs assessment that they have provided, where you have to show proof of need, financial need for this? Or are you just looking at a blanket across the board for everybody 62 and over?
The committee would like it to be 15% across the board for all their services. It's going to be a hard sell, and town council has advised this more likely will not happen, but if we can get them to increase it a little bit, they're saying that there are no contracts right now that have that in there, and this is the most that they do is that $2 a month.
Good
And
luck
that's
with
if you
that.
have an extra
I was going to
service.
say, that's only if you have an extra
Yeah.
service level, or the digital level, which of course costs more anyway. So, okay.
Madam Chair, if I could just
Mr.
highlight
Sussback.
a piece in this. So one big win on the town side of thing, beyond the direct consumer, you know, on the individual household, but in terms of town operations. So we'd been operating on the capital support piece on a pretty meager percentage that was just kind of really a raw deal. And we're effectively tripling that amount in this contract. And I think the piece that I want to stress to the residents of Winchendon is that our current broadcasting capabilities, all of our equipment, everything really, from the microphones to the cameras, any struggles that we've had with audio, any struggles that we've had with trying to have hybrid meetings, for example, and the ability to broadcast those have come from the fact that we have an excruciatingly limited budget to work from. And so that component alone, you know, over tripling the amount that will be able to go towards that on an annual basis will allow the town, over the course of this contract, to actually build a substantial system that we don't have to worry about failing, that will be able to effectively communicate with residents. So from a transparency standpoint, that's a really big win in terms of broadcasting our meetings. Separately, I just want to thank Linda and Dawn, Justin, and the rest of our staff who have gotten by with the equipment that we presently do have. It's hitting a point now where it's close to failure, but they've gotten by and done a lot with a little. So thank you to all of them for that.
One moment, please. Anything further from the board?
Madam Chair?
Mrs. Lapointe?
10 years? It's really have to be 10 years. Was there any, I'm not directing this at you, you did a fabulous job.
Thank you.
My face is at the contract. 10 years? Does it really have to be that long?
We did discuss that with the committee. They had looked to have that reduced, and, God, I can't remember what Comcast said about that.
I can speak to it a little bit as well. So the longer term, well, typically that's not recommended. For this one, it's actually advantageous to us because of the rate at which people are, quote, cutting the cord for cable, and where this income is tied directly to the amount of people that they have actually participating in purchasing cable channels. It's anticipated to fall off a cliff in the next few years. And so if that happens, but we're locked in for 10 years, they still have to give us that amount regardless of whether or not their revenue drops. It's counterintuitive, but that's the reasoning.
The opposite electrical. Yeah. Okay. Anything else from the board?
I mean, I have a lot, but, yeah.
Okay. I will open this up to public comment. I saw two hands, Mr. Ford and then Mrs. Santos. Or Mrs. Santos, then Mr. Ford.
How you doing? Tina Santos. Oh, sorry. 117 Mill Street. I was just asking for that second channel that they are going to be, that could be designated for the school. Could that possibly used for evening meetings to be live broadcast when there are two meetings. You know, for example, tonight we had a Board of Health meeting up on the 4th floor, and you guys were the live stream. So perhaps, and I know the issue could be the person or the coordinator that's going to be videotaping it, but perhaps maybe we can coordinate with the school in regards to the equipment and so forth to live stream it and have a volunteer of some kind. So it'd be great to have the two meetings
The ability to do,
live.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Ford?
Edward Ford, 364 Brown Street. You guys do know Facebook is free, right?
We do.
You do know that you could use your Facebook town site to broadcast not only our meetings, but, well, your meetings as selectmen, but your committee meetings by, this is the Commissions Committee Facebook page. Go to it to watch its live stream meetings. And you can invite people from their home to videocast into the meeting from Facebook. And it would not cost the town a penny, provided whoever's running Facebook right now, Zuckerberg or
Yeah.
the board, does not start charging us. Apart from that, all of us are on Facebook pretty much.
Right.
There is
thank
over
you.
5,000 people on the Winchendon residents' Facebook, and there's more Winchendon residents that are on Facebook that are not in that group. You have the discussion Winchendon Uncensored.
Right.
They are some people that left Winchendon residents to that group. And as you see, my Winchendon Farms has finally got back up to the right numbers of members. It's a nice honesty, Mr. FBI. We won't talk about that till it's time to address it.
Okay, well, definitely, we use Facebook as much as we can, but thank you for bringing that to our attention.
But yeah, we should actually be utilizing this Facebook ability way more. It is free, it is easy, everybody is using it anyway. So you put up the commission's Board of Health meeting on Facebook Live, everybody can chime in and move about their day. It can be watched later on in the week for the people that didn't get there. Very easy, no money cost us at all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so this will be back before us in 2 weeks? Is that the, I beg your pardon? All right. Mr. Kent.
Keith Kent, Mason Street. Regarding Comcast and the contracts, I'd like the members of the Board of Health and hopefully the Communication Commission to know Comcast is doing us no favors. Twice I have had to contact the Massachusetts Attorney General's office in the last 3 years. Getting communications equipment for our town is very nice. Unfortunately, we also have responsibility to the public to realize this is coming on the backs of the rate holders, and there is a quantitative balance that we have to burden ourselves with. This being responsibly said, and I understand this comes at a little displeasure, but we have responsibility to the public. The Comcast company itself is, according to what I've reported to the AG's office twice, they offer you packages where they offer you more channels and a better internet price in a combined package, and then they tell you that if you don't like it, you can go back to the previous package. What happens is when you try to go back to the previous package in a 2-year package, about 6 months to 1 year into it, Comcast says, oh, we're sorry, that package doesn't exist anymore, we deleted it. This is equivalent to bait and switch, which is illegal under all the chapter and subversive sections of Massachusetts general law, just like an automotive dealer switch. Bait and switch is illegal in Mass.
The common problem is Comcast has become so big and a proverbial giant in the cable communicative industry that when I contacted Massachusetts Attorney General's office both times, they have said that they have received so many complaints and that Comcast is so massive with so many customers, both New England and nationwide, it's become overwhelming for their office to try to prosecute. So what we have a problem is for say, when you have, for say, seniors get $2 off, this is a joke. We have to ethically realize we owe our seniors who have paid into the system their entire lives. They are on limited incomes. We look at the cost of inflation over the last several years skyrocketing, looking what they're going to pay for home heating oil this coming winter due to failing policies, looking at what food costs and so on. And how on earth are they going to afford for their cable to keep going up, even basic cable? So what we have a problem is that when we tell our good seniors that we got you $2 off, but unfortunately their food and their fuel went up by all these different percentages, what is $2? It doesn't buy them a can of soup.
No, I
Essentially,
understand,
they
yeah.
can't get a can of chunky soup. So let's keep it in perspective when Comcast says we're going to give you $2 off, which is why I totally respect the fact that people are trying to say, 15%. It's like selling a car. You've got to ask for more than you know you're going to get. That's business, obviously. But when I was in several different packages with Comcast, and I went through this with the AG's office and reported it twice, I literally had, at one point, I had these packages where they said, okay, it's $180 for a month, which was ridiculous, and I was dumb enough to try it. Now, I'm going to throw myself under the bus for this, where you had 200 megabytes per second internet, and you had 200 channels, and I had it for not even barely 12 months, and I said, I'd like to go back to the package where I had just 80 channels and 50 megabytes per second, and oh, we're sorry, we deleted that package. It doesn't exist anymore. And I was bait and switch. And I went to the AG's office, and they told me they had a gazillion complaints and that they weren't able to do anything about it because it was overwhelming their office with complaints. So then, I tried it again, and I was right back to square one, Madam Chair.
Sure.
So they're offering us equipment, and yes, the town is completely right in its assessment. We need this equipment, Madam Chair, but let's also not burden it on the tax and backs of our elderly citizens that are half our town. I'm just asking the town, please keep this in mind when we negotiate the contracts. I just think it's being ethically responsible, that's all. And for everybody who knows, you can get your internet through Comcast. I have Sling TV. Guess what? I get 85 channels for $40 a month.
Yeah.
That's what I paid Comcast in the year 2000, 23 years ago, for the same amount of channels. So I dumped Comcast, I got Sling, kept Comcast for my email, and I got the same amount of channels I had 23 years ago for the same price 23 years ago.
Sure.
So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. All right, anything else on this? All right, so next up we have the presentation of the draft special town meeting warrant for October 24th, 22. Mr. Solzback.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a memo in your packet that breaks this down. Just to reiterate for everyone that may be watching or anyone that's here this evening that these are in draft form. So you may see some of the exact wording change, but I wanted to walk everybody through at least point for point what they are. So in your packet, you have this memo as well as the draft of the warrant. And so I think if it works for the board, I'm just going to start rolling through these, and if anybody has a question, you can just go ahead and stop me. So committee report has the potential to be waived, but typically it would be a report from the Finance Committee. Article 2 is the payment of prior year bills. We're still finalizing what that figure would be, but we don't anticipate it to be anything terribly high. Article 3, we're starting to get into some of the borrowing pieces. So the Capital Planning Committee has met. They have gone through on a first pass and approved these. The numbers have changed a little bit, and they'll be meeting again on Monday, an insignificant amount in the changes, but we're just still kind of narrowing down some of these figures. So the first one for Article 3 is $100,000 for the purchase of supplemental downtown streetlight improvements. As I highlight in the memo, you can really break that down into two parts. So one is $65,000 for Central Street. So, and I'm trying to think of the most simple way to describe this. So the streetlights that you see on Central Street, it's a state-funded project, and they'll fund the base level for streetlights. We've run through this before. But if you have decorative, more historic, municipal-style looking streetlights, which is what the town opted for, there's an additional expense. So a portion of that we were expecting to have picked up by the Robinson Broadhurst Foundation. They did generously pick up some of that, but there's a remainder of $65,000. So that'll cover the gap on Central Street. Additionally, we're requesting $35,000 for lighting at the new park down on Lake and Spring Street, where we had put out, I believe, 2 bases for poles to be installed later, as well as potential lighting for the parking lot between Pleasant and Central Street that went in this past spring. Article 4, Library Phase 2. So we're going to do a little number crunching on this one. So that project has officially gone out to bid. This is the third time that it's come before town meeting for Phase 2, and that was something that we wanted to address and something that came up in the Capital Planning Committee. So, would you like to speak to that at all, Madam Chair, or you want me to keep going?
Do you prefer questions as you're going along, or wait till the end?
You can, let me finish the article, and then, okay, yeah, okay, deal. So the amount we're asking for here is $215,000 for Phase 2 repairs, and if I can possibly predict the question. So in May 17th, 2021, that was the first time we saw this one appear on an article. And I have it pulled up here, the article was amended on the floor, and I believe it may have been misspoke, and I don't think the full intent went through there. There were numbers effectively that were done on the fly. It was my first day there, and it kind of stood out at me. So on the clerk's copy, you can see that the amount, there were 3 components to this. So it was to use free cash, the other piece was to borrow, and the other piece was a potential contribution from the Robinson Broadhurst Foundation. So as you may recall, representatives from the Robinson Broadhurst Foundation came in at the last second to announce that they were going to award $200,000. Then chair at the time, Mr. Barbaro, with that information had amended. So it was originally $597 for the sake of borrowing. Let me make sure I get this one right. So yes, so it was $597, but it was reduced to $100. So we had $100,000 to borrow, $200,000 from the Robinson Broadhurst Foundation, and $300,000 from free cash. And so that left a little bit of a gap. When we went back to this most recent annual town meeting on May 16th, 2022, the additional amount, the $314,500 figure, which was entirely from free cash, was to make up for that error in the amendment that was done on the floor in 2021. So that brought the grand total, so once again, if you're still with me, $100,000 borrowing, $200,000 from Robinson Broadhurst Foundation, $300,000 in free cash, plus in 22 another $314,500 in free cash to $914,500. Now the low bids, or the bids have officially come in, and the low bid for construction was $998,785. The difference there being $84,285. So, if we're going back to what we're requesting, the difference that you're seeing there. So we're requesting in Article 4, $215,000. It's the soft costs. So the engineering and architectural fees, that's the component that's not carried in the construction fees. So the about $130,000 in soft costs, plus the roughly $85,000 in remainder from the construction costs, brings you to that $215,000 figure. Was that the question?
Yeah, I have a question. Now, I'm looking at a document that I got from the library a while ago, that there was an amount remaining from Phase 1 project for $75,000 that was also, you haven't added that in.
So that, I believe, was lumped in as part of this past May's, that was one of the funding sources on this past May's appropriation for the library.
14.5?
So that 314,500, that 70,000 or so remainder is baked into that number.
I don't recall that ever being brought up at town meeting, that 75,000 of this was coming from the previous.
We can go back and check it.
I think you need to check that.
It may have been for the purchase of Pleasant Street, and then that was backed out. We can go back and check, but either way, the amount that we have listed right now in the draft form, we can reduce. So if anything, it's high, and we can narrow it down a little bit. So we'll go back and look at that and double check.
Yeah, I would check the video from that town meeting, because I don't believe 75,000 was ever mentioned in that article. That article passed without any 75,000 being
And it may have
in there.
just been a matter of free cash. It was highlighted in the capital plan, and I'm gonna go back and look, because we're not gonna be able to nail it down right now.
Because I had figures that the library should have just 12,000 less than the lowest bid on this project. And that's why I was wondering, why are we asking for 215,000 if we were only 12,000 less?
Right, and I have 85,000
But
less.
you don't have
So that-
75,000
The difference
in
being
there.
75, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll take a look at it. Were there any other questions on that one? Okay. Article 5 is asking for 95,000 to supplement highway material lines. So when we built the paving plan for fiscal year '23, from the time that it was developed to the time we got to the annual town meeting to the time we actually got to paving, the price had escalated for material. And so we had to carve out and set aside Pleasant Street and a component of Island. In addition, we've since found some infrastructure failures on Summer Street. There's a sinkhole at the intersection of Pleasant and Summer that's patched right now, but it pretty much runs from that point to Central Street. And so we're requesting 95,000 in free cash so that we can move forward with that work. The reason being that, one, if we put that off till next year, the costs are just gonna continue to increase, and so we're better off just doing it now. We're gonna stretch our dollar further. The other piece is that 95,000 roughly represents the change that we saw in the budget in terms of support from the state. So when the time comes to finalize the annual budget in May, we're going off an estimate. We're going off, the governor's budget. But what ultimately was approved from the state was about 95,000, 90,000 or so higher. And so it's kind of a wash. It doesn't dip into our free cash. It's a revenue that we didn't know we had. And that's why we're recommending to increase the fiscal '23 highway line rather than just directly funding it as a separate appropriation, if that makes sense. Okay. Article 6. So this one had come up, and Chief Smith is here this evening if anybody has any questions. The Capital Planning Committee discussed it. Since I came to town, we've done a couple different reviews of an updated fire station design. As you recall, it went to a town meeting. I believe it was roughly around 12.5 million. It fell short on the vote. I went back with the chief and the architect, and we brought that down closer to about 8.5 million. So what this request of $618,750 is representative of just design services for that fire station if it were to be built. The Capital Planning Committee had requested that if this were to go on as an article, that it go on as a debt exclusion, that it's not something that we funded through borrowing or free cash. The reason being that they felt it would be a referendum on community support for that project. Are there any questions on that?
Oh, go ahead.
Mrs. Anderson?
I'm real tired of paying for designs.
Yeah, I'm with you, Barbara. Yeah, that's.
You gotta be kidding me.
Excuse me, no, I'm sorry, please don't.
I can actually address a little bit on that if the town manager doesn't mind.
Okay, yeah, come on up, Chief Smith.
So there'll be other questions. That came up at capital planning also, and as we all know, continually putting design, and not using any of the design is miserable. When nobody likes to do it, it's not how we want to do the projects. The initial $75,000 that was voted to do the study is being used towards this. That's what that design completed, and what we took when the town manager and I sat down to pare this whole project down. We sat down, we took the drawings, we've used the information, the data collected, and we literally moved broom closets, made hallways 6 inches narrower to cut costs. But we used the design information and the drawings and the conceptual design to get to the stage where we were able to get a price estimate, which was almost $4 million less than what the original was. So I think that, albeit it seems like we're constantly, this is the next style of design to get us the architectural drawings so that they can go directly out to bid. We don't want to keep coming back on a project. We want to go to the town floor the following year with the actual number on a bid. We don't want to do many projects in the past, and we've discussed this at length, have come back because bid prices changed, the prices escalated. We want to come to the town when the full project comes to the town with a number. The number that tomorrow, the day after the vote, would start the project. And this is the only way to go about doing that. If you've got the design, the actual drawings, the costs, and you then can go out to bid and then come forward with the final number.
So to reiterate, what you originally paid for wasn't a biddable design. That wasn't something that we could hand to a contractor and say, hey, build this. It was just an overhead with layout, rough square footage, and really was more of a needs assessment for that building than an actual buildable schematic.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. We have not had anything done at this level.
No, the original was the facility needs assessment,
Conceptual.
which went out, which provided us with conceptual drawings. We would then be going forward. This would be for the actual architectural drawings, putting it out for it to go out to bid, the bid documents. And this way the project could then go forward with an actual legitimate number that's not changing every which direction.
Okay. Open up to the board.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Ward.
Okay, some of the issues I have with this, other than doing all these things for plans, and I know that the $800,000 for plans failed at town meeting, and that's why we're now looking at it for $618,750. But I remember when that failed, a meeting we had, that the big issue was you need to get out to the public and let them know what it is they're getting for their money. What exactly were the changes that were made from the first go-around to this go-around? And the figure we keep hearing is 9,500,000 under 10, but those figures were like a year and a half ago. You know they're over 10 million now. It's got to be.
I can actually address that too. We again, that's something that did come up in the capital. The numbers on the amount that we were able to trim out and cut out and move things. When we went out for the price estimate on this, we went out in February to get the estimated costs, but it also was built in with, I believe it was a 7 or 10% escalator, knowing that construction cost. So that we saw ahead to figure that into this $618,750. The other portion, once we hopefully could get this board's blessing, the plan is then to, once we know it's going to be moving forward to that point, then we can start over the next 2 months meeting with we've met with different boards, meeting with the general public. I've talked about doing every couple of weeks, or I don't care how many times, we can do a Zoom informational sessions to try to reach the people that don't want to come out to meetings but do have questions. We plan to do an open house at the fire station, and we've opened it up if people want to just come ask me questions on it. I've really got no issue with that. And we're going to, during those programs, and put together a handout showing what we initially had the price come out at, what we've cut, so we could show how it's stepped down, and we also can show how the costs for the studies, as was brought up for the past study, how that's contributed towards where we are with being able to move the project forward. So we're addressing the need to get out to the public and get out with the information at the same time as trying to, but we don't want to get out with that if we're not moving the project forward, because the numbers then would be eventually changing a lot more, and we wouldn't be going forward with. The number that we have before you is a concrete number that tomorrow we could go out and start explaining to the public why we need that number and how we arrived at it.
I think time is running out because we're heading close to a month away from town meeting. And I have not seen any public meeting gathering about the new fire station. In fact, I didn't think this was coming up till May. I was surprised to see it on the list. I think we need to get out there and get this going. Public's going to want to know how much, they know how much this costs, but they'll want to know what exactly is this new fire station going to involve? What were the changes from the previous one? And they are going to want to know if we pass this and we get to a 9, 10, 11, who knows, it's around the 10 million project. What's that going to cost me on my taxes? And if it's $200 a year, they need to be told that, not a year from now. They need to be told exactly what you foresee if the price stays this, what's it going to be on my tax rate? And they need to know that in October at the town meeting. If we can't give them that answer, it's not going to pass. I'm just saying that.
Oh, and I understand the concern. Like I said, as we keep pushing it to the next town meeting, the numbers that we go out and get are then incorrect and then incorrect. So by continually pushing it off, that's why we brought this number, a concrete number here to you tonight, so we can go forward and educate the community and explain to them what it's for and what we're doing for it and what the expenses would be going for. And that's another reason on the debt exclusion that I think is important, actually, is the fact that the community knows what this is for. Nothing against any town government, but people are very hesitant sometimes when they do not know what the money's going for on some type of an override.
Right.
If they can be shown what it's for and explained to them, then they have the choice, okay, we feel we need this or we don't feel we need this.
Right. Mrs. Anderson, were you going to speak?
I think my other concern is that debt exclusion, because sitting here and talking about raising your taxes for debt exclusion, you've got that CPA that you're anticipating in the spring to raise taxes a little bit more. We just learned that electric's going up 100%, and water and sewer's going up. And we just can't do this to people. We can't keep doing this. At some point, people are gonna break.
And I understand that also.
We need to understand that and start working within our budget.
Again, that's one of the reasons on the debt exclusion, that it gives the people the option, if they feel that's what they feel the community needs, then that's their option that they get with a vote. And if they're against it, then they would vote against it.
Well, I think what you're misunderstanding is I'm saying we're pummeling them and nickel and diming them a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more over here and more over here and more over here, where they're no longer going to be differentiating that we need a new fire station. Does that make sense to you? Because everything else, we're pulling everything up, everything everywhere. And they're going to snap and not realize that this is a necessity and maybe something else might not be. Not that I want to point fingers at any other project, but people are looking at their regular expenses rising exponentially.
And that's, again, where I think it's important to give them the option to decide. If they feel that they don't want to, they want to pay cable instead of for a fire station, that is absolutely, and that's what's good about today's operations in the government, is that they have the option to just vote no.
Right.
Or yes.
Well, I guess I'm trying to figure out how we can't manage some of this in the budget. Like, this is our budget. Our budget also goes up every year, 2.5%. So why is it the town can't work within a budget?
That's an excellent question, and
I thought
I will
so.
happily answer it. And I think you hit the nail on the head. So we can raise taxes 2.5% every year. Healthcare cost goes up 6.5%. Cost of fuel went up for everybody, it went up for us too. And so when we're trying to run a town on a pretty limited budget as it is, where the town is getting squeezed. And I think in a broader sense, when we're looking at the amount of projects that we're looking at, there isn't a single nice to have that I could identify on our capital plan. And I'd love to say there is one, but frankly, there isn't. And it's not even a matter of, oh, the buildings are tired looking and they could use a facelift and it would look nice. It's a question of the buildings are literally falling apart and they're structurally deficient. And so it's a problem that over the past 10, 15, or 20 years in areas where the community should have been making investments in some of their infrastructure, and the community unfortunately wasn't. Now, there were needs, and I understand that, and there's never a good time to pay for these things, but unfortunately, I think this community has come to a point where a lot of these items, we can't put them off anymore. And I don't mean that in the sense that it's inconvenient to put them off. I mean it in the sense that these buildings are going to physically start falling in on themselves if we put it off any longer. And so I wouldn't necessarily say it's a matter of the town's inability to work within the budget. If anything, I'd say that me and my staff do an excellent job trying to do a lot with really a very small amount.
I disagree.
I respect that. The tax rate that the town of Winchendon has compared to the rest of the Commonwealth is pretty low. And I think the needs that we have are disproportionately high. And if anybody out there has a solution for that, I would gladly take it, but I've yet to identify one beyond increasing available funds to fix these problems.
Okay. Mr. Ford, I will allow you to speak on this. Please be brief. It is getting late.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. We have, do I have to do my name and address again? I'm good. My name is Edward Ford. I'm registered to vote at 364 Brown Street. We have Monty and Monadnock. They know to look stuff up on the internet. I can guarantee you they can pull 20, hey, Elsa, get out of there. I can guarantee you they can pull up 20 to 30 different fire stations around this country, draw up in a nice, friendly, school-inspired tradition of this is what we want for our mummies and daddies to skimmy down a pole and run out to what could be their last call. I can guarantee you those dark skins or wolf pack pups, whatever they choose tonight, decide they could do this. You ship it from their school, say about 9th grade and up, to Monty Tech, who are a trade school. They know each nail, each piece of foundation. Monty Tech says, this one is approved. Then you guys approve that one, and you just saved yourself millions and taught your next generation how to do it better.
Thank you. Yep, that is a consideration
I can't be
that we will keep there. Thank you very much. Anything further on this draft article?
Madam Chair, I
Yes,
just have
Mrs. Salter.
one thing to say. Well, first off, my concern is we're going to ask for the $618,000. So then if the voters decide, yes, okay, here's your money, and then we're going to go back, and then we're going to find out, well, no, prices have gone way up, and we find out now it's, say, $14 million. And then what we'll say is, well, you already spent $600, so it'd be foolish to waste that. And I'm really, that makes me very nervous to have to do that. That's the first thing. And the other thing is, I agree with you, Justin. I mean, we only have so much money, but sometimes there comes a point where you have to say, we can't afford it. And at what point do we do that? And I fully support the fire station, I always have, but my concern is selling this. to the people. And it's going to be a tough sell. And right now, you haven't sold it to me. So I can't turn around and sell it to other people.
And that,
Just,
to address the first part just quickly, that 618 does have on the pricing of that, does have a 7 to 10% escalator figured in that, so that when we do come back with those plans for the station, it's, again, we're not saying, oh, sorry, we missed the boat on the estimate.
yeah.
It's got that estimated built in already on a price that just recently was priced out in February. So it's, you're basing, we've based the increase off of that, knowing that it potentially could change on that. So that way we weren't surprised by it. That's where we got to still that $8.5 million project versus the 14 or 12 that we were at before. So we've dropped it down that much to do that. The amount as far as the total to sell it to the community, I guess that's kind of what we're looking as a department to be able to do. I want to be able to take a number to the townspeople, and without having it go before them, that if we do it in May, the 618 is going to change, because obviously then again it's going to have to go out on another price check. So we're looking to have it go on the ballot, onto the draft, onto the town meeting warrant, so that we can sell the project to the community with a number that we know is accurate at this point. So in order for us to do that, we need to have you as a board move it forward as a draft article, or as an article, so that we can give the people the choice.
And that I have no problem, because to me, it's up to the town to decide whether or not they want to do that. It's not, it's not my decision, it's to the town. So, and you put a lot into this, and as long as you're ready, I have no problem, that part of it. But I'm just saying, when it comes to the vote, that's on the floor, you're going to have to sell it.
We
Because
do
that's what
understand
it's gonna come down
it's
to.
an uphill battle, and we do understand
You know.
that. However, we are passionate enough on the project and want to bring it forward correctly, so we end up having accurate numbers that we want to be able to
Okay.
bring that to the
And
townspeople.
you're just going to have a plan, because I think that if you go before the voters one more time and they shoot you down, that's a concern too,
Madam Chair?
'Cause we can't keep doing that.
Mrs. Lapointe?
Might I suggest you open up the fire station to let people tour it, and do tours on Facebook to show the conditions that are only getting more and more dilapidated, and have them imagine being a female firefighter and having nowhere to change that's private. Show them,
And
right, what it's like, and they would be on board like I am.
And that's the opportunity that we want to be able to go to the townspeople with.
Right.
Yeah, that's huge, because I know, even for me, that's my push to my other, my female friends. We need to do this for the female firefighters, and it's only fair. So that part of it is huge, and should really be pointed out.
Because, we'll have
More
you
than
guys come to
anything.
our houses 20 times a day, right, to fix us and to help us, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, you're gonna have to show them more than you should, that the help is also required on your end.
All right, anything else? Nope. All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thank
You're welcome. Thank you.
Article 7.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you all thought that was a big bite. So Article 7 is a little more nuanced than at first glance. So what we're looking at here is the main transmission line, so the main water line from Ashburnham into Winchendon. And so this is the pipe that brings all of the water that you see in Winchendon if you're not on a well. And this is a pipe that we've known about and we've known to be deficient for about a decade. So it's never been a good time to fix this, and it's still not a good time. And by example, when I got to town, we were talking about a $6.5 million pipe. I haven't even been here for a year and a half yet. And now it's an almost $10 million pipe. And so I think these are some of the things where I'm trying with increasing desperation to highlight that some of these things we just can't put off any longer. And while in the short run it might save us some money or have the appearance of providing some relief, in the long term it's really shooting us in the foot. So we're trying our best to address this one. We have a more updated, engineered plan We'll go through and try to reduce this as much as we reasonably can to bring this number down, but it's not far off from where it's going to be. In terms of trying to find a way to address it, there's the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. So basically, the community wouldn't have to front all of this money up front. We wouldn't have to borrow at a high interest rate. It's a fund designed by the state that would allow us to borrow at pretty much a rate lower than inflation, 2.4%, and stretch that out over 30 years. Now, with that said, if that number holds up at $9.5 million, and we do secure this Clean Water, Drinking Water State Revolving Fund loan, and the state does forgive about 19% of that total project cost, so about a fifth of it, that's a big win. Even with all of those factors, it would still be roughly a $350,000 annual payment over the next 30 years. That is not budgeted for. And as you may recall, when we went through the rate increase discussion for water and sewer, it was highlighted that in addition to that, we still have that $6.5 million pipe, well now $10 million pipe. And we need to find a way to address that. So what we're trying to do with this warrant article is to really bring a sense of urgency to this problem. If this thing goes down, there is no water, there is no alternative, and there is no second pipe. So you're paying for it one way or another. We're also losing a substantial amount of water through that pipe. It has slowed down. It's not deteriorating quite as rapidly, but we're losing a big portion. And so when part of the conversation about the water rate is that there's a lot of water that we're treating and shooting out that never actually makes it to a meter, this would address some of that problem as well. So there's some small savings there. But the hurdle is, how do we come up with $350,000 a year? We can't put all of that on the backs of the ratepayers. It's not realistic.
No.
A piece of that will have to be on the back of the ratepayers. It's the only way to do it. And I think mirroring part of the conversation on a much larger scale in terms of raising the water and sewer rates is how much of this is a town obligation, if any. And if part of it is, what percentage of it? And if it is part of the town's, well, then what's our funding source? You know, we have a little bit of ARPA money left. Could we dip into that? Could we go to Robinson Broadhurst? You know, payments for this wouldn't hit till 2026. Could we request $300,000 a year from them to shave $1 million right off the top by the time we have to start making payments? That's an option. And also we have a meeting, it's in my town manager's report, but I set up a meeting this Thursday with members of Senator Markey's office down in Washington, D.C., that at least 2 of you are welcome to attend so we don't violate quorum issues, in an effort to try to get some of these federal funds that we keep hearing talked about in the news that may eventually be available, but they haven't really set a time yet. I want to make sure we're first in line so that we can at least try to get some money. Now that said, I don't think the federal government's going to hand us $10 million, and more realistically, it'll maybe be $1 million or $500,000, but just something. And if we can keep trying to get all of these different funding sources to drive this number down, that's the hope. So with all of that said, and all those caveats, this warrant article is authorizing the town to borrow that amount because we need that vote in hand in order to finish the application for the state revolving fund. And without that commitment from the town, we can't apply for those funds, and we won't get that 20 or 19% forgiveness right off the bat. It doesn't mean that we would move forward with it. We should, but it's strictly an authorization. So I just want to highlight that for everybody. When push comes to shove and the time comes to actually do the project, would we be obligated to, or would there be some type of financial penalty? We're still trying to figure that out. The financial penalty to pull out would definitely be less than that $10 million price tag, but it's something that really needs to be fixed and needs to be addressed. So if anybody has any questions, I hate to always be the bearer of bad news, but that's a pretty big one.
Could you define repair?
It would be a full replacement.
Okay, because it says repair.
Mm-hmm. We can update the language there.
Okay, replace
the article
sounds better.
says
I'm thinking
says
repair. What do you
replace.
mean by?
Yeah, it's not a Band-Aid. So what we
Completely replace, and how long is that pipe?
right. So we would be effectively abandoning in place the existing. So we'd be building a new pipe that whole length, and I don't have the exact length
Oh,
offhand.
so you put a whole new one? You
Yeah.
leave the old one?
And then
you
hook it
switch
up and switch.
Okay.
So there wouldn't be any significant disruption in service, kind of like what we did on Central Street, but on a much bigger scale.
Okay, yeah, how long?
It's about 5 miles.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
About 5 miles.
5 miles, okay.
And does it take the same route that the old one
Nope.
does? or-
Different.
Nope. There's a section that goes through the woods right now on Sherbert Road to North Ash Road. That's gonna be eliminated. It's gonna continue up Sherbert. And then there's a paper road that cuts under the power lines that goes to North Ash Road, and it's gonna run entirely in the road, because our biggest obstacle at this point is the piece that runs through the woods from Sherbert to North Ash, because there's no records of where it exists, or for us to even access it. There's no roads, there's no nothing.
Okay.
Anything else at this
That's all
time?
that I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Article 10.
Article 8.
8, my apologies.
I'll take the hint, though. I'm a little faster. So this is just part of the OPEB trust account. So when I came to town, we had an agreement with the Finance Committee about setting forth some financial policies in terms of goals that we want to hit, in terms of trying to save and bolster our reserves. So for OPEB, that $110,000 figure, the policy is written is that it's 10% of our annual healthcare costs. So that number is 10% of fiscal 23's healthcare costs. Okay. That's how we came to that. Article 9, $50,000. That's just a set figure that's recommended in the financial policies, and that is part of the contractual separation payout. So if there's anybody that has an older contract that we have to pay out sick time or anything like that, or if anybody who's been here for a while that has a lot of vacation time built up, and we do have a series of retirements that we had identified about a year ago that are upcoming, and they're starting to hit. So that'll just insulate us a little bit. And then for the stabilization fund, the $160,000 is a placeholder. So the financial policy calls for 10% of free cash to go into the stabilization account. We haven't finalized what the free cash is going to be. So the final number there is going to be lower than 160,000, but I just wanted to make sure that I didn't put it in a spot where we had to go higher. But those are all good things. It's all savings, and it'll help our financial position significantly. For the 11th, Article 12.
No, 11.
Oh, did I skip 11?
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. So this is an additional $50,000, and this goes hand in hand a little bit with the conversation we just had. But when I built the budget going into last May, I had padded a little bit extra to try to account for the fluctuations we were seeing in energy costs, but also with the hope that these things would eventually plateau, and they continue to increase. And so I think out of an abundance of caution, what I'd like to do, and I had conversations with Mr. Kane with the FinCom, is to set aside a $50,000 appropriation from free cash specifically for energy-related costs, whether that be electricity or deliverable fuel, that we would have to go to the Finance Committee to get approval to release, so that there'd be some oversight, but also an opportunity to have some type of public mention or acknowledgement of that overrun on the budget, so that department heads or me couldn't just come in willy-nilly and just ask for money. We have to advocate and justify it and explain it to the citizens. So that's my recommendation. For Article 12, so this piece, 12 and 13 actually, as you may recall, there were changes to the charter in the 2021 annual town meeting that didn't go to a ballot vote, and so that expired. So we're bringing those ones back. And then in addition, Article 13, which is what we intended to do at last year's annual town meeting, but opted to put it off so that we could do all the charter changes at once, so that we weren't continuing to dip in and out of the charter and making little changes here and there. So nothing has changed on either of the two of those, but they're just coming forward at the same time in two separate articles. So all in all, 13 articles, not a super heavy lift, but there are some pretty weighty ones on there. So does anybody have any questions?
Anything at this time? So you'll be coming back on the 26th with the final warrant, is that correct?
That is correct. So we're going to continue to work to narrow down some of these numbers, brush up the language a little bit, but also provide some more supporting information for each of these things. There's a lot of studies and legwork that we put into every single one of these articles. And we want to provide the backup so that the public has a chance to fully understand and get the full picture of how we came to these conclusions. So we'll be compiling those in a presentation form and running through it in its entirety on the 26th.
And could you refresh our memories on when is the FinCom public hearing, when are the votes going to be taken, et cetera?
Mm-hmm. So, unfortunately, I don't think I have that directly in front of me, but I believe it's going to be, the public hearing's on September 27th at 7 p.m., which is the day following the selectmen's final review of the warrant.
All right, and when is the board doing their vote? When are we taking our votes?
So I believe you will be voting your recommendations on the 10th?
Okay, after the FinCom public hearing?
Correct, and then the
Confirm that.
24th will be the special town meeting.
Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, old business, wastewater request for proposal, RFP update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as you all know, the water portion of services, we just went over in a recent meeting and entered into a contract as part of the Joint Water Authority with Ashburnham. But our wastewater services, we stand alone entirely. And so we do have an RFP out for that process. As part of that process, mirroring the water process, we had a mandatory pre-bid walkthrough last week, and at that walkthrough, the only firm to show up was Veolia North America, meaning that where it's a mandatory walkthrough, they're the only firm that expressed interest, but also the only firm that can bid. And so the question that we wanted to bring forward to the board was the existing contract that we have. It was set to expire this June. You had voted for a short-term extension of, I believe, 6 months. The way the agreement is presently written, and I attached to the full agreement in your packet, that we have an option for 2 additional renewals in 3-year periods. And so we're at a little bit of a crossroads here. You could move forward in the RFP process, but knowing that Veolia is the only bidder, they could just throw out a number that's higher than what it would be just to negotiate a 3-year extension. The way that pricing happens, the negotiating process is outlined in Exhibit E of the document. It takes into account different escalators, cost of materials and labor that were pre-established when the original agreement hit. And so this time, we're looking for direction from the board. It doesn't have to be a decision that's made tonight. It would have to be made by your next meeting on the 26th. It would be, at this time, barring any other information, my recommendation to pull the bid and to do a one-time extension. And down the road, circumstances could improve. Down the road, it could be the same. And you could put it out for an RFP again, and it could just only be Veolia again, but a lot can change in 3 years. But at this point in time, that's the reality that we're looking at. Separately, I did have a chance to walk the wastewater plant today with DPW Director Croto, Vice Chair Ward, and Selectwoman Anderson. And we'll be walking it again with Selectwoman LaPointe on Wednesday. If anybody would like to go through and set eyes on the operation and get a good idea for how things are run down there, how they're operated, I think it would be a good opportunity to walk it between now and the next meeting, if you'd like. So reach out and let me know. It's the least exciting tour you'll ever go on. So that said, if anybody has any input or, like I said, direction, I would gladly take it. These are the circumstances. I did not create them, but I'm putting the ball in your court.
All right, thank you. So as you said, we can make a decision on this in 2 weeks. We won't cause any problems there. What's the pleasure of the board? Chew over it for another 2 weeks?
Yep.
Okay. Any objection to that?
They've already gotten 2 extensions,
So you're saying,
extra year extensions.
Justin, we either extend what we have or put it out for,
For
ask
bid.
them to rebid, to give us another contract.
Right, but typically, so realistically, the way it would play, it's not a guarantee, but the way it would probably play out is you'd put it out to bid again. Sorry. Realistically, the way this would probably play out is if you put it out to bid again, now it's openly known that there's limited interest in running this plant, and you're probably going to get a higher bid.
Okay, so if we open it up for bid and it comes in, say, really high, can we elect to keep the old contract and just renew it? Like, if we open it up for bid, does that
Right.
extinguish the current contract?
So, not necessarily, but Veolia doesn't have to extend. They're not required to extend. We can offer them an extension, and they can take the extension. They could also deny it. So if we went through the full process and they bid, for example, they're not gonna bid lower than what their extension would have been. So we know right off the bat that that's kind of a losing proposition. But if you're asking,
Okay, say we want to renew the current. Can they refuse to do that without us opening?
they could walk away. So at this point, they satisfied the agreement. And the extension has to be a mutual extension. We can't make them.
Do you think they're
stay.
going to extend?
Yes, just because they expressed interest in bidding.
Okay.
But there's never any guarantee.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
If we let this process play out and only accept their bid and then put it back on the street, there's a chance that they pull out and don't bid again, and now we're stuck with trying to find another contractor to come in in the temporary to run the plant while we're trying to do another RFP and get somebody in. Typically, when you have one bidder like this and they don't, and you don't go with it and you go back out to bid, you're saying you don't want their bid, so they're probably not gonna come back.
Okay.
Mr. Ford, please keep it short. Correct.
Great. So in the situation of Viola, it goes back to, again, we should be changing shifts. We are water users. We should be in there as water users processing this water. I am not currently a water user, but I will put in a 5-hour shift to make sure it's done right. I know how to look stuff up on the internet. It's there.
Okay.
Any water user that can complain about the water or the price of water can say, I'll take 5 hours and go process that water.
All right, thank you very much.
And one more question.
Yes.
To Brian, why do you think no one is bidding? Why do you think it's only?
So there's
Go.
limited ways for these companies to make money. And when Veolia came in the first time, they capitalized on all the ways they could to save money so that they made more money the first time. There's no startup cost for Veolia, so there's no money out front. If another firm was to come in, there's a startup cost. It costs them money. So if there's no money to save, then they don't make as much money. And with more municipalities going to this style and less, well, I should say there's less municipalities running the plant because there's less operators out there.
Yeah.
So it's getting tougher and tougher. We've seen it quite a bit with the plant here where they'll pull in different specialties either from the Leominster plant or the Gardner plant or so on and so forth, and we're not paying for that. That's part of the contract. So if we had to pay for some of that, it would cost us twice as much. So, and that's what everybody's coming to find out is Gardner just swapped 2 years ago or a year ago from in-house to out-of-house because it makes more sense. It puts all the risk on Veolia and nothing on the town. And that's my 100% stance behind it is I don't want to be responsible when we're dumping raw sewage down
Oh,
the
I agree.
Miller's Rivers.
There's a huge value to that, absolutely. Yep, okay, thank you.
Mrs. Santos, did you wish to make a comment? All right, thank you. All right, so we will see this again on the 26th. Thank you very much. 8.2,
And also just a reminder for anybody who would like to tour the plant, just let us know.
I'm sorry, you've already spoken on the issue. Thank you.
So we have here a memo on a special municipal employee. So this had come up in a recent meeting with the hiring of Glenn La Rochelle, and I'd made reference to the special municipal employee process. I did check with the clerk's office. It would be typical if the board had made that determination previously that it would be on record. Wendy Stevens couldn't find any mention of it on record. So basically what this is a situation that happens in small towns pretty frequently because there's a lot of overlap. You're drawing from a smaller population, and so you see a lot of double coverage on different boards or committees, but also people that work for a municipality that also volunteer their time as a resident on a board or committee. So in this instance, for Mr. La Rochelle, he works for the Department of Public Works, but he also volunteers on the Board of Health and he volunteers on the Conservation Commission. He does not receive a salary for those two. And so it would be typical in this situation if the board is agreeable to voting the role, but not the individual, to be a special municipal employee. And that's highlighted in an attached, wrong folder. Well, it's there. Okay. And an attached document that was provided by Attorney Riley, kind of highlighting that process. And so it's my request this evening, once again, if the board is agreeable to, if there's a motion on the floor, to decree that the Conservation Commission and that the Board of Health would both carry special municipal employee status, and that would take away any potential conflict. And then whenever there was an employee that would fall in that category, they would have to fill out the form that I just had up, a disclosure form, and we would just keep it on file.
For some reason, in the past few years, I was looking at this. I don't remember what the situation was. There are very strict guidelines by the state from the Ethics Commission as to what can and cannot be done. Agreed that in smaller communities, when you have so much reliance on volunteers, that you're going to have this overlap. Mrs. Anderson, what are you going to say?
I think that, I can't even remember what I was going to say. The problem with that form is it gets filled out, it gets filed in the town clerk's office and forgotten about. And I don't think that excuses him from voting and not recusing when he should recuse under those circumstances. I think, you know, he told me when we appointed him to conservation that he would recuse if it were necessary, if there was a conflict, and I would expect him to do the same on Board of Health, regardless of the form. Just because the appearance of impropriety is more important. That we don't want people at home saying, well, he voted that way because he works for the DPW.
Right.
I understand that, yeah.
And I can stress that to him on the employee side of things, that, you know, as a request that he do in instances where there may be that perception, that he takes the time to just quickly recuse himself, or to at least call it out and make reference to it.
So is this like a blanket kind of authorization?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
For the boards and commissions, not the individual.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
For the Concom and the BOH.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Ward?
Well, the problem I have with this is the conflict of interest law, even though we may get irritated at it at times, and I know some of us has crossed the line, I being one of them, and had to be corrected. But the guidelines are good, and I really have a problem because what this does, the conflict law is less restrictive for people designated special. So now it gives them, they can hold multiple jobs, they can have business interests, and it starts pushing that envelope wider. So I guess I'm just against the whole idea of, you know, I don't, unless you can show me a real problem in this town where we're losing people because they're not special municipal employees, I don't see that great conflict. Now, I've seen a couple that popped up lately, but I don't see it overall as a problem we have to address, just my opinion.
Was there something that prompted this to come before the board?
The hiring of Glenn La Rochelle, because
Okay.
he is technically in conflict unless this vote goes through.
Because Board of Health oversees the transfer station and DPW.
So,
Transfer station falls under DPW.
right.
But if he's voting on something to do with the transfer station, and I agree with Mr. Ward, just recuse. It's easy peasy.
I agree with that. But he would still need to have this designation in place,
To serve.
yeah, in order to serve.
Again, I have to go back when he was appointed, and Selectwoman Anderson asked him, and he said, I'll just recuse myself. He didn't see it as a problem. So I don't know why it's a problem.
I think other people are seeing it as a problem.
That's what I was trying to find out.
And to be honest, it's not even a matter of somebody coming forward to me and saying, hey, what's up with this? This is just out of due diligence. No one's really pointed
Right,
it out or expressed
but by
concern.
granting him special employee status, are we negating the need for him to recuse?
Well, it's not granting him. So that's the important distinction that's outlined here. It's granting the role. So, for example, if down the road, well, so Mr. Cloutier, by example, I guess, is on the Conservation Commission, right, and the Board of Health? He covers both?
Yep.
So same thing. So down the road, if he held a paid position in town that exceeded that amount of hours, he too would be in violation. So it's kind of a weird dynamic. And like I said, you don't really run into it a lot. I ran into it in my previous community because it was of similar size. I've now run into it here. And when it comes up, I mean, the reason that the State Ethics Commission has a ruling on this and a maneuver that you can do to make sure it's legally covered is because it happens. It's not super uncommon.
Can I back you up, though?
Yeah.
And this is just a simple, short answer. Would he recuse if the topic came up on the board that he was sitting on that conflicted with his job?
I think that's a question for Glenn. In my opinion, he would. I believe he would. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't.
But aren't you saying he can't be on those boards unless we have this?
Correct.
So, he can't do it.
So if this doesn't
Have to,
pass,
like,
he would have to resign from the
resign from the
Concom,
boards.
the
But,
Board of
and
Health,
I apologize,
or give
because
up
our
his
meeting has
job.
run so long, and he was here, but he
I
got
know.
tired, and I don't blame him. I would want him to sit in front of me and tell me he's gonna recuse before I grant him that status. I need to know that.
Mr. Croto,
So Mr. LaRochelle's position would never make a decision or do something for the DPW that would hinder either boards. So Glenn doesn't have any financial interest for the conservation or the Board of Health. The Board of Health, the transfer station is run through the DPW, not the Board of Health. The Board of Health has nothing to do with the
They
transfer
oversee
station
it.
in this town.
They oversee it, yes?
No,
Yes, they do.
all the paperwork is through my office.
But if there was a problem at the transfer station, who's in charge?
Me.
And so that's like kind of the rub here is that at the role that Glenn is holding does not make any determinations of any financial interest at all. So that conflict, the concern of a conflict, it really functionally couldn't exist.
But the problem is, where does he get his paycheck?
From
Where
the-
does he get his paycheck?
From the town, but the Board of Health and the Conservation Commission,
Are working for?
there isn't a vote that they could make that would impact
Of course there
his take-home salary. It's determined by my office.
But again, it's the presumed,
So what we're talking
bias.
is perception versus reality. And so what I'm trying to highlight is that it literally could never be the reality by design. The way our organization is designed, it could never be the reality. Perception we can't really do much about, but the things that we can do among them is voting something like this in place and having them fill out a disclosure form so that it's on record, so that at least helps with the appearance. You know, I hear around town all sorts of things about the way certain things look, believe me, and there's not much you can do about it beyond trying to do the right things and put, you know, these type of procedures in place.
But I feel like being proactive, you gotta get proactive, and you've got to say, you know, I will recuse. And he did tell me that before. I have no doubt that he would. I'm really not doubting his integrity. But before I feel like we take that leap of faith of granting him special employee status, he needs to sit here and say that he would.
Well, it's granting the role. It's not granting him. So I gotta keep stipulating that.
No, he's
So
a special employee, is he not?
Yeah, but it's specific to the position. I'm finally reading through it right now. It's specific to the position. What's his position title?
What is he officially? A laborer? Yeah. So
it's designating every laborer.
No, every member of the Conservation Commission or every member.
Ooh,
of the
I don't
Board
like
of
that
Health.
at all.
So what I would recommend, because functionally it accomplishes the same thing that you want, but it gets this off my plate, because we've been backburnering a lot of things lately, and sometimes I just need to clear the slate so that we can get to other business. If the board would be up for approving this on the condition that at the next meeting we bring Glenn in and you can ask him to state on record that he would recuse himself. Now, if he says that he would not recuse himself, you have the appointing authority over those two commissions, and you could remove him from those commissions.
But, I'm sorry, Madam
Or
Chair.
could we remove the special employee?
But
Madam Chair?
Designation of them.
Madam Chair, I think we're getting off course, because if we wanted to have the person state before us that they would recuse themselves, we would have to have every single member of that board state that they would recuse themselves,
was a
were they in the
conflict.
future to get a paid position, because it's designating each laborer position, or excuse me, each member of that board as a special employee.
But why does the...
So I don't think we should be focusing on just the one that has the current paid position. It would be an across-the-board thing, and I don't think where we're going is that we need each member to, I swear to God, I will recuse myself. Does that make sense?
I would almost see it that as the other, if that situation occurs with another employee, then we,
Sorry, Madam Chair.
I apologize. I had to ask that question.
Because, to answer Barbara's question, he has to put his name on that form because he has to declare the conflict, but the designation of that special employee would be for every member of that board, not just the one with the conflict, correct?
Well, if you're gonna create that standard, then you should hold everybody to it, and I just wanna backtrack real quick, because I see Mr. Kent sit here, that you appoint the Conservation Commission, but you don't appoint the Board of Health. But just as a quick aside, so, honestly, this is kind of escalated to a bigger thing than I thought it would. This is paperwork. This is just paperwork. It's really, and I'm not trying to like minimize your concerns, but this is really just, it's a form. And it's really kind of become a thing. So I don't know if there's anything else I could do that could ease your concerns about it, but it's a pretty standard practice. It's not like some curveball that comes. It's literally addressed by the State Ethics Commission because of the frequency at which it occurs. So
I think my personal opinion is it's fine to do, we vote for it, and if somebody puts themselves in a position where they should be recalled or whatever it is, then they've put themselves in that position when you take action against that particular person who has done the wrong thing. If they don't recuse themselves from a financial vote, then they're in trouble.
No.
Yes.
Mr. Kent, for the love of
Hello, Madam Chair.
all things Murdoch,
Greetings.
please keep it short.
You have my word. I think we can simplify this real quick. Director of the DPW is correct. They have right now complete control over the transfer station. I had this previous conversation with the previous superintendent, Al Gallant, when it came up before. It is set up this way because at this time, Health Agent James Abair has enough on his plate for just 37 hours a week, up from 32 at this time with COVID dollars. The health agent wants nothing to do at this time with taking over the transfer station. He has neither the hours or the resources or the staff. End of that, simplified for you the best we can. Yes, under Mass General laws for all purposes of legal transparency, previously speaking with Attorney Cheryl Sabara of the Mass Association of Health Boards, yes, boards of health can pass regulations over transfer stations in landfills. However, speaking with Mr. La Rochelle myself, when he came on the board, he told me that he would be more than willing at any time to completely recuse himself from anything for the integrity of the board, for the will of being able to serve his town. End of discussion. He told me that he even would ask me if he would need to recuse himself. So it's totally a non-concern for the integrity of the board, the integrity of the town. And if he needed to recuse himself as chair, I can tell you right now, I would be the first for the integrity of the town, the board, and the laws we are managed by under Mass General laws to go to him and tell him he would need to recuse himself. I give you my word on that. I would not allow the town to be endangered or the integrity of the board. That's not going to happen while I'm sitting there. But Mr. La Rochelle wants to serve his town. He was completely forthcoming. I can tell you when he was working at the transfer station this last weekend, I saw him work with integrity. I saw him helping people. I saw him being very forthcoming, going up to cars and trying to help people. I thought he represented the town well as a DPW employee. And I just want you to know that he did tell me that if he had to recuse himself from anything, he would come to me and say, "You're the chair. Do I need to recuse myself?" And I would tell him flat out, yes or no. We also know that through Attorney Cheryl Sabara of the Mass Association of Health Boards, that they are there at any time. And I have had the town manager's word in the past that if we can't get a word from the Mass Association of Health Boards, yes, KP at that good old $2.50 an hour, he doesn't want to have to pay. Last resort, they will get us an answer if nobody else will, but we will not endanger the integrity of the town. I can't speak for Conservation Commission, but I got a pretty good gut feeling they hold themselves to the same standard. But I can tell you right now, do we have some authority in terms of setting regulations under MGL? Yes. Would we ever do that willy-nilly? No. Does it fully fall under Director Croto at this time? Absolutely. And does the health agent want anything to do with it? He has told me directly he doesn't have the hours, the staff, the time. The answer is no, so I hope I've answered any of your questions.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I see a note here, if we get to the point, motion is being finalized by legal counsel and will be available Monday. Do we have that motion?
I apologize, we do not, so we can postpone it to the 26th.
Okay. Mrs. Salter?
Whatever the board chooses, fine with me.
Okay, well, we don't even have the motion yet, if that were the wish of the board, so we will revisit this on the 26th.
I like it.
All right. 8.3, Mr. Solzback.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this has been an ongoing issue that I've been working to be pretty proactive about. And I'll just run through the basics one more time for anybody that might be watching. So for cannabis-related industry in town, there's two realistic revenue drivers. One of them is the 3% excise tax that you only get on recreational sales. The other is the 3% community impact fee. And both of those items are built into our existing host community agreements for everything cannabis in town to date. Several months ago, I started the process with KP Law to take a harder look at that over concerns that, just on some information I had been reading from the Cannabis Control Commission and through some of the courts, that the community impact fee was starting to be looked at in a different light and would potentially be struck down as unlawful. So with that in mind, when we started receiving checks from the Bud Barn that opened at the start of this year, I had asked that we hold those funds separate in a separate account and then after a while just stop cashing the checks and just physically hold the checks until we saw how that played out, because I didn't want the town to get in a situation where we accepted these funds and then after the fact it was deemed unlawful to collect it. So since then, Governor Baker has signed into law an act relative to equity in the cannabis industry that in fact struck down that 3% community impact fee, meaning that any monies that we take moving forward wouldn't really meet muster in the courts. So my request is that the board vote to return the community impact fees that have been made to date, and that secondly, the board vote to authorize me to amend any existing host community agreements to remove that 3% community impact fee component, just across the board on any that we currently have, and then any moving forward, we won't incorporate it, and that should cover us. The biggest issue was that the courts deemed that 3% community impact fee, that communities would have to actually sit down and penny by penny identify what those expenses were and how they were incurred. And just realistically, at this time, we haven't identified any expenses. It's not like we have, ridiculous issues of traffic or increased crime or anything that we could directly tie to the opening of the Bud Barn, and that's the reasoning here. So if any of you have any questions, I would gladly answer them.
Questions, comments?
Madam Chair.
Mrs. Lapointe.
So an issue much larger than us, I just think it stinks to high heaven, because I think a lot of voters voted on it based on having this funding, and it's just a big ploy, just like the tobacco industry. It's never going to go anywhere because it's just a bunch of crap. This is just the same sort of thing. I just think it's wrong. I think it stinks. I think it's ugly, and it's ridiculous.
Anyone else? Comments, questions? If none, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ward.
I move to authorize the town manager to return any community impact fees collected to date, as well as to amend any existing host community agreements to waive the community impact fee requirement.
Seconded.
Made and seconded. Any discussion?
I would just like to
Mrs. Anderson?
agree with Ms. Lapointe that people voted on this because, and they voted for the 3 licenses because of the money it would be coming into the town for it. And, to pass this law after the fact and say, no, you can't, we basically sold it to people under false pretenses, and it's wrong.
Lobbyists are winning once again.
I'm sorry?
Lobbyists are just winning once again.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, it wasn't a false pretense at the time because we were told that we could do it.
But
But
passing
now-
that law
now
now and
that-
saying, now go back and say, no,
By
you
the
can't.
state
Not on our
government.
part. I don't mean on our
Right.
part.
Yeah. But we still will get the tax revenue. So there will still be income from it.
But not what we were told,
Correct.
and it stinks.
Agreed. But I'm sorry, not tonight, thank you. So we do have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Negative?
No.
No? Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, how many no's were there?
Just one.
One.
Thank you.
Just the stubborn one.
No, I do that sometimes, just make your point, yeah. Mrs. Hulsback, illegal dumping and littering.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So last time this came up was about 3 months ago in a selectmen meeting, and as a group, we had committed to reviewing this quarterly. So there isn't a substantial update. It's an ongoing issue that we're working to address. We have had some instances and some successes in, for example, posting a camera down at the bike path, just to try to cut down on graffiti. And honestly, since that has been up, we have seen limited instances of tagging down by Blackbridge. Is that the, yeah. So we're seeing some wins, but there's still a lot of areas where it's an uphill battle. You see frequent correspondence from Mr. Keith, who's out there walking the beat and picking it up, but it's kind of a shoveling against the tide type of situation. So we're continuing to work on it, and just the point of this item on the agenda is just to keep it at the front of everyone's minds, and if they have any trouble areas in town, to bring it to the attention of my office, and we'll try to work with the resources we do have to address it.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Yes, Mrs.
Just
LaPointe.
a quick, just attempting to think out of the box, not out of the box. I know we don't really have the resources for this, but we at one point had a client who was facing, I think it was a federal charge, because somebody had found a piece of his mail, had his name on it, it had floated like out of a trash bag after it was picked up, but he literally had to go through legal proceedings because of this. Can we somehow identify any of this litter and bring in 1 or 2 people just to show people that we will?
And I think that's part of the hope, is if we can, get a couple people on it and the word gets around. It is a pretty common practice to try to find, receipts or mail or other, identifiable objects, but more often than not, it's things like, old rugs or couches or mattresses, and there's really just no way to trace them.
Nip bottles.
Nip bottles, yep.
Yeah.
A lot of
So I'm
nips.
gonna buy some fingerprinting kits. 'Cause because they're all, I see them all the time. As Chair of Board of Health? Yes. Oh, we're not done yet. We've still got multiple items on our agenda.
So you can get on with your stuff. So, Madam Chair, I've been writing you, obviously, as a resident, obviously, so we don't violate open meeting laws, writing you as a resident, so I'm going to speak to you all as a resident. This being said, what we're finding a lot of on major thoroughfares is people aren't securing their loads in their vehicles a lot of times. It's not just things being tossed out the windows. The hill section of River Street, major thoroughfare is an example going to the dump. I don't know if signage would help possibly. I know it costs money. Everything costs money, as we know. But one thing I had touched base with Selectman Anderson, I was looking to speak with Selectman LaPointe. She's obviously been very busy since, she just got her degree and now she's working 1 million hours a week. One thing we're finding is people going down the hill towards the transfer station, major thoroughfare. I've been picking up a lot of larger items of bulky waste, along with things being thrown out the windows. And I'm finding a lot of people, even when I'm at the transfer station, they're pulling in the transfer station, they're not tying down their loads on their vehicles. You get up to a certain speed, aerodynamics are pulling things out of the back of people's trucks, they're getting sucked out onto the roads. I see people coming to the transfer stations, they actually have rubbish cans full of non-returnable aluminum cans they're dumping in the bins, or paper, and they don't have lids on them. And they don't have the lids tied down, and things are being pulled by the wind out of the back of their trucks into the road. So that's one problem I seem to see time and time again we're having. The town on Earth Day did a cleanup in May. I know Selectman Anderson and Board of Health member Tina Santos worked extremely hard on Tannery Hill on Earth Day, and Barb always targets that to her credit, and I want to thank you for that. And every year she goes there, and every year she comes back, and I hear the same words, oh my God, because over winter it just piles up and piles up. We went back, as I've written you all, I cleaned Tannery Hill in June, July, and August. And then in August, this is the common denominator that we have, is one of the mental components and mental health components resulting from COVID shutdown. We're realizing, and I've read a lot of studies about this, people don't care. A lot of people have stopped caring. We have this wonderful guy, 82 years old, Henry Finch in town, who used to pick up Tannery Hill and River Street all the way to the dump, who's been honored before, wonderful man. Henry, God bless him, isn't picking up anymore, so we're helping out. He shouldn't have to, he's 82 or more. Henry used to pick up Tannery Hill once a month, to his credit, into his 80s, God bless him. And it was more than enough. Now Tannery Hill needs to be picked up once a week. And this is all post-COVID shutdown. There's no question this is post-COVID. There's no question. People talk about cause and effects of what the shutdown did in people's psyche. You don't have to have a degree in psychology. The proof's laying on the roads, okay? A lot of people don't care. They stopped caring. And the proof is everywhere, in their habits, their actions, and what they're throwing out the windows. What am I finding on the side of Tannery Hill? And I hate to have to say this. Cans cut down to 1/3. People are cooking drugs in them. And when they're done, they're tossing them out the windows. I'm sorry to have to say that. It's very unpopular, and I apologize I have to tell the board this, but we need to have people know. I'm picking up too many of them with gloves. That being said, we're finding, thankfully, I haven't hardly found any needles or sharps, but I am finding the things they're using to fill them with. A lot of bulky waste, we're finding headlights, rugs, lid covers. Again, lid covers, Madam Chair, things that weren't tied down, blowing out of the trucks. These are all coming at a cost to the town out of your municipal budget that the director also has to apply to you for payment for. So the bills are going up, your expenditures are going up, the taxpayers are footing the bill, but this is post-COVID shutdown, we're finding much more on the sides of the roads.
Okay.
Okay, so, but these main thoroughfares, Forestall Road, if we're gonna work with Recreation Commission, as I was talking with Tiffany Newton about doing a fall cleanup, I guess one question we have to ask the town manager and the good board is the money that is going to help pay for such said obligatory dumpster and materials, will this come from the money that was left over from the Board of Health's Earth Day, Justin, town manager, sir? Will it come from the money that potentially went back into the general fund? Can we use that leftover Earth Day Board of Health money to help the Recreation Commission pay for these additional cleanups since we had all that money left over? Because I don't think Recreation Commission has the money, and we actually asked this question at the Board of Health tonight. That's a separate issue. But as a resident, I'm letting you know that we do have these issues where people are throwing things out the road. But in August alone, I picked the road up every single week, and the road looks like I didn't pick it up last week again. I could fill between a 13 and 30-gallon bag. So we thankfully have the Recreation Commission who now wants to help out. But I guess as a town, municipally, we need to ask ourselves, can we take the money from what was left at Earth Day?
Right.
Can we take it back out of the budget and use that to help the Recreation Commission? And what are your feelings about it?
Okay, we'll take
Food
that
for
into
thought.
consideration, yep.
Food for thought. So
Thank
chin
you.
up, stay positive, keep pushing forward, because there's no going backwards. Okay?
Mr. Ford?
Again, Edward Ford, 364 Brown Street. I got 5 hours a day, any day of the week. If you want to cut half that pay and put it towards this project, I would appreciate it. As everybody who knows me know, I don't care about the almighty dollar. It's not my weight to carry. I would much rather have some food on my plate, some food on my neighbor's plate, some clothes on my kid's back. It's more important to me.
If you, dog's name?
Elsa.
Just off the, off the chair, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Town managers report.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
Yes, I
Before you get
apologize.
to that, could I just make some comments on this?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank Keith Kent for his efforts to clean areas of town, although I would encourage Keith not to go out late at night like you've done. Too dangerous. I really think we have to get over this idea that we do an Earth Day once a year. We need to have a town cleanup, and at the minimum, it must be every 6 months, but I would say quarterly. And it can be volunteers, but we need to have maybe the Board of Health organize it and get the volunteers and get the DPW to give the bags and get the volunteers out, and maybe we hit certain sections of town. But as a minimum, we can do this, I think, quarterly, every 3 months, do a massive town cleanup. And if we advertise it enough, we might get enough people, more than 3 or 4 people to go out, to actually get something done. I know the town I used to live in, they used to do it quarterly, every year. I mean, and they had hundreds of people go out and clean the town. They also had, again, I'm bringing this up, the Adopt a Road program, where people who live on a certain section of the street, if you can get them to adopt the road, and they get a recognition, maybe a certificate or something says, you know, the Smiths family, Jones family on Elm Street have adopted this road, and they commit to the town, they'll go out and keep it clean. You get organizations like the American Legion, the Auxiliary, to pick up a section of the road that they're going to clean. I was in Knights of Columbus in Arizona, and we had our highway that we went out every 3 months and cleaned the highway. No charge to the town. All they had to do was provide the bags and pick them up when we were done. And they would go along the highway and pick them up. So these are programs that don't really cost a lot of money. And we've got Keith Ken, Tina Santos. They've done this on Earth Day, so they know how to organize it. Maybe they can get something done. And
Thank
I
you.
would support that.
Thank you. Anything else on this issue? All right, Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to notify the board that the year-end process for our financials is nearing completion, and we expect the DOR to certify our free cash in advance of the special town meeting. There are some outliers there. So we have some accounts that are showing as deficit on the school side because they're waiting on reimbursements from DESE and other grant programs in the amount of about $1 million. And so if that's not reimbursed in time by the time we have to certify our free cash, it's going to make our available free cash seem artificially low. But should that situation occur, I'll make sure I highlight it and make the board aware of what the issue really is. But at this time, it's just the schools are waiting on October 1st window to open. But we have a meeting with Superintendent King, myself, and our accountant tomorrow to try to iron it out. On the personnel side of things, we are in the process of conducting interviews for the town manager executive assistant role and also the treasurer collector clerk. And then upcoming, we have interviews set up for the assistant treasurer collector as well as the town manager administrative assistant. So there's a lot of roles that we're actively trying to fill. For the salary survey piece, I've solicited quotes from 2 additional firms. That includes MRI, or Municipal Resources Inc., out of Plymouth and Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and the Collins Center for Public Management out of UMass Boston. Those 2 combined with Community Paradigm Inc. are kind of the big 3 for that type of municipal work around here. I'm going to compile those and have responses for the board for the 26th. That would include all town hall positions. But I just wanted to highlight, because I've heard some rumblings, all town hall positions, excluding my own. This is exclusively for the staff. It's about making sure we're compensating our employees fairly and also making sure that we're competitive when we're trying to secure talent. Has nothing to do with me. On project updates, the Capital Planning Committee has kicked off meetings for fiscal 23 with another meeting scheduled for this upcoming Monday, September 19th. As part of those discussions, I just wanted to highlight to the board that repairs to the old Murdoch are going to be designed in one shot. So effectively what that means is we have an amount of funding available, an appropriation that was made available at the annual town meeting in 2021 for repairs of the old Murdoch. The intent was, I think at the time, at least my understanding was that it would be to do it in 3 phases: design phase 1, build phase 1, design phase 2, build phase 2, design phase 3, build phase 3. Realistically, breaking out that way costs us more money, and we're better served designing the whole project from top to bottom and then using that design to break it out into buildable chunks that would be able to identify more clearly in terms of the financial impact. So I just want to make the community aware that that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be using the available funds that we have to design the entire project. But in addition to reshore up the temporary shoring that we have in place there and to do a more modest phase 1 construction just to maximize the use of our dollars. The amphitheater at Winchton Community Park is moving along. Stairs were installed last week. I had sent you all a picture. And we've been meeting pretty regularly just to talk about that kickoff event next June. Special thanks to the DPW for clearing out the properties at Beach Street. Both the garage and the 2-family are fully cleared out. So we have an appraisal set up. Appraiser came by this afternoon actually for the 2-family, and we've been pricing out the potential demo that we would like to do before the winter, but I'm not ruling out that it might have to wait till the spring depending on environmental considerations. So we'll see how that goes. Central Street, as you've seen, is moving along. I noted it on social media, but I just wanted to stress once again that the asphalt paving on the sidewalks is temporary. There's a delay in getting the curbing. We've seen that for other projects. The granite curbing, there's a big backlog. So we didn't want to leave it as a dust pit. It's a really thin layer of asphalt. It was something that was called for in the budget already, state funded, and when the time comes and we can set the curb, we'll be pouring concrete for the permanent. We are working for the Fall 22 grant round of Green Communities, and we are trying to have a targeted effort to improve the efficiency for our heating and cooling in Town Hall, given the fluctuations that we've been seeing in energy costs. We're just another way we're trying to insulate ourselves from that in the future. On the miscellaneous side of things, we received over 20 cases of COVID test kits free through the state, and thanks to Jim Bear and Keith Kent and the Board of Health for assisting in securing those and distributing them throughout the community. And also, as I mentioned, there's a meeting with Senator Ed Markey's office that I had set up for later this week. So it's Thursday at 12:30. If one or two of you would like to attend, maybe, well, now's a good time to volunteer, I guess, since we have all of you in the room. Does anyone have any interest? It's a virtual meeting.
I'm sorry, what time Thursday?
12:30 on Thursday.
It's a virtual meeting, you said?
Yes, and it can
Okay.
only be 2 of you.
Understood.
I can do it unless somebody else wants to, because I'm free.
If somebody else wants it, they can take it. I just have to do preschool drop-off, but then.
I think I can be there. I'll know better tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. And we'll just be trying to identify potential funding sources for that pipe. So, and that is everything that I have at the moment.
Thank you. Questions, comments on the town manager's report?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ward?
this is a question I get asked all the time. When is the wrapping around the tower at Old Murdoch going to be put back up?
It's a great question, and it's a question I receive all the time as well. So before the winter is the short answer. So the biggest concern is moisture getting in and freezing. So it's been delayed a little bit because we've been trying to iron out this design piece, and that will kind of determine the cash flow that we have for the project in terms of the funding we have in hand now. But with that said, since we've came to that determination that we're going to design the entire thing, I've directed the OPM to get a plan together to wrap it up well in advance of winter.
Anything further? All right, thank you very much, Justin. We do have we have any minutes ready this evening? Okay.
July 25th and August 1st.
Okay, so first before us this evening are the minutes of July 25th, 2022. This was a regular meeting.
Madam Chair?
Mrs. Anderson?
Could I just say, and I want to go real quick, I think they're still too brief, that there's not enough information there for like the concerns. And I would like that a little bit better elaborated, but I still want to make a motion to accept them, the meeting minutes for Monday, July 25th, 2022.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye.
I'm going to
And
abstain.
one abstention, thank you. Next, we have the minutes of the joint meeting, the Master Plan Implementation Committee. Vice Chair Ward, Ms. LaPointe, and I were there as part of the MPIC process, so brief minutes for your approval this evening.
Madam Chair?
Mrs. LaPointe?
I would move to approve the minutes from the joint meeting with the Master Plan Implementation Committee of August 1st.
Second.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if it's not too much, could they be amended to include my presence as staff support?
So moved.
You okay with
Second,
that
yeah.
amendment? Okay, thank you. We have a motion to approve as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I will say aye, and we will have two abstentions.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. We have no communications. Our next meeting is the 26th. We do have an executive session this evening.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Anderson.
I move to enter into executive session under exemption number 2 to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union employees and to reconvene into public session for the sole purpose of adjournment, subject being the town accountant position.
Second.
Was that a second?
Danielle did.
Yep. Roll call vote. Mrs. Salter?
Aye.
Mr. Ward?
Aye.
Mrs. Lapointe?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are in executive session at 9:29.